Rebuilding the Immortal Cultivation family. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1 Li Family. To the east of Zuinitan continent, near the sea, there is a river rushing into the sea. Because of the rapid flow of the river, there are waves of white waves, so it is called Bailang River, and the area it flows through is also named Bailang County. And the Bailang Li family is the owner of this 100-mile territory. But the Bailang Li family is a legendary immortal cultivation family. Its ancestor was originally just a hunter in the mountains. Because he accidentally saved a foundation-building cultivator of the beast control sect, and happened to have spiritual roots, he was brought into the beast control sect to practice. Decades later, the ancestor of the Li family suddenly met with great luck and broke through the foundation building and gained a foothold in the beast control sect. It was a pity that because of some accidents, he had to leave the sect and come to Bailang County to create the Li family. The Li family has been passed down for more than 300 years. By the time of Li Zhirui, it was already the 9th generation, but the family's strength had never made any further progress and had been hovering in the foundation building realm. Fortunately, the appearance of Li Zhirui gave the family elders a glimmer of hope. Because Li Zhirui has both water and wood spiritual roots. Unfortunately, the purity of Li Zhirui's water and wood spiritual roots is 50, which is not a true genius, but he is also the first dual spiritual root member of the Li family in the past 100 years, and there is a great hope that he can break through the golden elixir. The reason why Li Zhirui is not a true genius is that the number of spiritual roots determines the speed at which the cultivator absorbs spiritual energy, and the purity of the spiritual roots determines the efficiency of refining spiritual energy. Although Li Zhirui absorbs spiritual energy very quickly, his efficiency is not high, and he is not even as good as some cultivators with 3 spiritual roots, but the purity of some spiritual roots reaches more than 75. At this time, Li Zhirui was in his room, breathing in and out the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Li Zhirui was seen sitting cross-legged, with a layer of faint glow appearing around him. As he breathed in and out, 2 continuous spiritual lights entered his mouth and nose, and were refined through the meridians, and finally turned into his own mana. After an unknown amount of time, Li Zhirui's tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, a gleam of light flashed in his dark pupils, and his aura suddenly surged. Li Zhirui's handsome face was full of joy, and his words were filled with excitement. He said, "Finally, I have broken through the late stage of key training. Li Zhirui is not from this world, or rather, his soul comes from another world. He is a graduate who has just entered society and is not sure whether to say lucky or unlucky. Although his experience in his previous life is few and of little use to this world of immortals, demons, and monsters, as an adult, his willpower is stronger than that of his peers, and he is more aware of the importance of cultivation. Therefore, even though Li Zhirui has better qualifications, he dares not slack off in his cultivation. He practices diligently all day long and works very hard." Li Zhirui calmed down his inner excitement, stood up and strode out of the courtyard. Li Zhirui, who had already noticed the movement, couldn't wait to ask Li Zhirui as soon as he saw him, "Rui boy, have you broken through?" As the only 3 foundation-building cultivators in the family, how could Li Zhirui not see through Li Zhirui's realm? The reason why he asked was nothing more than wanting to hear Li Zhirui's answer in person. After receiving Li Zhirui's straightforward affirmative answer, Li Zhirui said excitedly, 18 years old in the late stage of key training. Even in the beast-taming sect, it is rare. My Li family is really going to rise. Perhaps in order not to put too much pressure on Li Zhirui, Li Zhirui swallowed the last few words abruptly. "You consolidate your realm, I will go to report the good news to the clan leader." After saying that, he was about to run away. Li Zhirui couldn't stop Li Zhirui, so he had to send him out the door, and waited until he walked away before closing the door. Turning around, looking at Deking who fell asleep by the pool, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Deking is a 3rd-grade spirit beast, the king-song turtle, which the family spent a lot of money to buy and contracted for Li Zhirui. You know, a 3rd-grade spirit beast can grow to the Giantin realm. Although it is extremely difficult to break through the Giantin realm, it is not a problem to break through the foundation-building realm. Therefore, the value of the king-song turtle is not low. The Li family spent a full 12,000 spirit stones to buy the king-song turtle that had just broken its shell. It can be seen how much hope the Li family has placed on Li Zhirui. Since Li Zhirui was 5 years old and found out that he has 2 spirit roots, the King Song turtle has been by his side. When he was 8 years old, his meridians were no longer so fragile and he could start practicing. After he broke through the first level of key training, he signed a contract with a King Song turtle under the care of the family elders. This is not to enslave the King Song turtle, but a mutually beneficial contractual relationship. For example, if one party's cultivation increases, the other party will benefit. But there are 2 sides to the story. While the contract brings benefits, disadvantages also come with it. That is, the realm gap between the cultivator and the spirit beast cannot exceed 1 major realm, otherwise the cultivation will not make any progress. This is about the practice of Li Zhirui, the Wanling Sutra. As a vassal family of the beast-taming sect, most of the Li family members practice the Wanling Sutra, and Li Zhirui is no exception. As the fundamental practice of the beast-taming sect, the grade of the Wanling Sutra is still quite high. From the key training realm to the nascent soul realm, it is very perfect. It can be said to be the foundation of the beast-taming sect. All cultivators who practice the Wanling Sutra can contract a spirit beast in each major realm to enhance their own strength. At the same time, contracting spirit beasts with the same attributes can also have a certain benefit to their own practice. In other words, it improves the purity of the spiritual roots of the cultivators. But as we all know, the cultivation speed of most spirit beasts is very slow. If you want the spirit beasts to ensure a faster cultivation speed, you need to invest a lot of resources. So under normal circumstances, there will be no cultivators who contract a spirit beast every time they break through a major realm. If the Li family had not made great contributions to the beast-taming sect, the Li family would never have been able to obtain all the methods from the key training realm to the golden core realm. Duqing, who is now in a deep sleep, was affected by Li Zhirui's breakthrough and was digesting the benefits brought by the contract. Li Zhirui knew that Duqing would not wake up in a short time, so he turned back to the room. The moment he activated a warning formation, he suddenly disappeared. The next moment, Li Zhirui's environment changed instantly, and he came to a space where various first-level spiritual medicines and spiritual valleys were planted. The space was not large, about 2 miles square, and it also included a small mountain that occupied most of the area and was only a few dozen feet high. The lake at the foot of the mountain was only 5 feet in size, and a large spiritual field full of spiritual objects. This small portable space was the golden finger that Li Zhirui brought with him as a traverser. After years of exploration by Li Zhirui, he had almost developed all the functions of the space. To sum up, there are 2 points. First, if the spiritual stone is buried near the spiritual medicine or spiritual plant, it will speed up its growth rate. 1 spiritual stone can speed up the growth of the spiritual object by about 1 month. The maturity period of the first-level spiritual medicine is generally 1 year, which means that if 12 spiritual stones are consumed, the spiritual medicine can mature in an instant. But the problem is that the value of a first-level spiritual medicine on the market is only 10 spiritual stones. If a large number of orders are placed, the price will drop. Therefore, this ability is not as exaggerated as Li Zhirui thought. Of course, it is not useless. It depends on how Li Zhirui uses it. The second function of the space is to consume spiritual stones, but it is just to throw spiritual stones into the lake to enhance the spiritual energy of the entire space. In fact, Li Zhirui has discovered another function of the space, that is, no matter what the attribute is, even spiritual medicines or spiritual plants that have special requirements for the growth environment, they can grow healthily and vigorously in the space. Li Zhirui walked to the spiritual field. He opened up and skillfully used the spiritual rain technique to water the spiritual medicine and spiritual grain. On the left side of the spiritual field is the green spiritual grain. A bunch of heavy spiritual grains are hung on each ear of grain. When you get closer, you can smell a fragrance full of vitality. On the right are various spiritual medicines, from the most common golden bud grass to the more precious yanling fruit. More than a dozen spiritual medicines grow neatly on the spiritual field. After watering the spiritual field thoroughly, Li Zhirui walked through it, pulling out the weeds that competed for spiritual energy one by one, and also checked whether there were any parasites. After completing a series of things, it was already an hour later. But Li Zhirui did not leave the space, but walked towards the hill, because there were still a lot of spiritual medicines and spiritual plants planted on the hill. New book release. Please support. Please follow up. Follow-up is related to the recommendation of the new book period, which is very important. Please, everyone. Maybe you can punch in and sign in after reading it? Thank you. Chapter 2 Crisis. While Li Zhirui was working hard to take care of the elixir, a group of senior members of the Li family gathered in a secret room to discuss a major event concerning the survival of the family. Fifth brother, tell everyone what you heard, Li Zhirui, the current head of the Li family, said with a gloomy face. The Li family now has a total of 3 foundation-building cultivators. Among them, Li Zhirui, who is in the late stage of foundation building, has the highest cultivation and serves as the head of the family. The other 2 are Li Zhirui and Li Zhiding, both in the early stage of foundation building, serving as law enforcement elders and transmission elders respectively. In addition, there are more than 50 key training clansmen and more than 100,000 secular clansmen, who together form the Bailang Li family. The 5th brother mentioned by Li Zhirui is named Li Shais, an old key training cultivator with a lifespan of less than 10 years, but he serves as a very important responsibility of the family, the Elder of Foreign Affairs. To put it simply, the Elder of Foreign Affairs is the intelligence chief of the Li family, specializing in collecting all kinds of news and intelligence from the outside world, big and small. This time, Li Shais learned a very shocking news. The beast-taming sect's mortal enemy, the Bailang sect, gave birth to a nascent soul cultivator yesterday, perhaps because Li Shais has been taciturn for many years and has been exposed to too much news. These words from his mouth seem particularly bland. But even so, this sentence still made the elders present tremble all over, and fear and terror appeared on their faces involuntarily. As a vassal family of the beast-taming sect, how could they not know that the hatred between the 2 major sects has lasted for hundreds of years? In the past, the beast-taming sect relied on the contracted spirit beasts to suppress the Bailang sect and violated the interests of the Bailang sect in various ways. Now that the Bailang sect has a nascent soul cultivator, how could they let the beast-taming sect go? Whether this incident will lead to a war, I believe you all know it in your heart, so I won't say more. Li Zhirui broke the silence in the secret room, sighed deeply, and said, let's make arrangements now. Let the clansmen pack their bags and leave Bailang County as soon as possible. Patriarch Li Zhirui stood up in shock and said anxiously, we are just a vassal family of the Beastmaster sect. Even if the Bailang sect attacks, they will not attack us. Yes, Li Zhirui's eyes were full of bitterness, and he said, the Bailang sect will not attack us, but will the forces that are vassalized by it let us, the remnants, occupy Bailang County. When the fight really breaks out, if the Li family has the upper hand, then the Bailang sect will definitely help. If the Li family loses, the result is naturally self-evident. In short, no matter what the result is, the Bailang Li family, which has been passed down for more than 300 years, can no longer continue. Li Zhirui was speechless and sat back with a dejected look. Go and inform the clan members, Li Zhirui reminded. Don't forget that the family has established a branch overseas, and we are not without a place to go. Speaking of this, we have to mention the major crisis that the Li family encountered more than 100 years ago. At that time, the Li family only had 1 foundation-building cultivator, and he would sit in meditation within a few years, and no one in the new generation of clansmen had yet to break through, and the ambitions of the 2 major families nearby were already obvious. It can be said that the Li family at that time had reached a critical juncture of life and death. Fortunately, at this time, Li Zhirui successfully broke through the foundation, and his spirit beast King Tong Tiger also broke through, and with the old man's foundation building spirit beast, this saved the Li family's territory. It was because of this crisis that Li Zhirui made up his mind to open up a branch overseas. If the Bailang Li family encountered any accidents again, then the family's bloodline and incense could continue. Fortunately, the worst result did not occur. On the contrary, under the leadership of Li Zhirui, the Li family became more prosperous and powerful. When Li Zhirui mentioned the overseas branch, everyone's hanging hearts finally settled down a lot, and they all stood up to notify those clansmen who were not in Bailang Mountain. As for the more than 30 clansmen who stayed on the mountain, Li Zhirui notified them personally. Dong dong dong, 3 low bells rang on Bailang Mountain, falling into the ears of every clansman. After finishing the trivial matters in the space, Li Zhirui was about to take a bath and relax, but he didn't expect to hear the family's urgent summons. He hurriedly performed a cleaning spell and hurried to the family hall. When Li Zhirui arrived, almost all the clansmen who stayed on the mountain had arrived, but he found one thing: That is, except for the clan leader, there was no other family leader, which made Li Zhirui feel a little uneasy. I'm calling you all urgently because I have something very important to announce, Li Zhirui said solemnly. A nascent soul cultivator has been born in the Baiyu sect. The family must leave Bailang County to preserve the inheritance, so after you go back, you must pack up everything within 3 hours and then gather at Donghu. Donghu, the family is located at the easternmost part of Bailang County and is also the resource point closest to the Infinite Sea. 10 or 20 miles to the east is the vast sea. Seeing that everyone was still standing there stupidly, Li Zhirui shouted, "Go quickly, patriarch." "What about those clansmen down the mountain?" a white-haired old man suddenly asked. Li Zhirui was silent for a moment, and a trace of determination appeared on his face. He said, "Cultivators will not take action against mortals, but Bailang County is not suitable for my Li family to live in. Before leaving, I will notify them and let them leave Bailang County." Of course, Li Zhirui still wanted to take some secular clansmen away. After all, it is difficult for a cultivation family to continue relying only on cultivators. Li Zhirui was not bothered by other people. After the clan leader finished speaking, he turned and left. Because Li Zhirui's parents in this life were both ordinary mortals, and unfortunately passed away a few years ago. After Li Zhirui returned to the small courtyard, he took the lead in pulling out the spiritual medicine planted next to him, and threw it into the space casually, and planted it when he was free. Then he swept away all the spiritual objects in the yard, and finally walked to Daquing, who was still digesting the feedback, and carefully put it into the spiritual lake in the space. After confirming that the warning formation was still there, Li Zhirui pinched a breath-holding technique and jumped into the small pond in the yard. The small pond was not deep. It didn't take long for Li Zhirui to reach the bottom of the water and swam towards a place where fluorescent dots flashed. This is an unformed spiritual vein, which was accidentally discovered by Daquing after Li Zhirui chose this place. Because of his own idea, Li Zhirui concealed the matter and did not report it to the family. And today, Li Zhirui's goal is to take the semi-spiritual vein into the space. As for whether it can succeed, Li Zhirui is not sure. Li Zhirui placed his hands on the spiritual vein, thinking of putting it into the space as he usually did. But the next moment, the mana in his body poured out like a flood. If he hadn't felt the slight tremor of the spiritual vein, Li Zhirui would have let go without hesitation. Time passed bit by bit, and before Li Zhirui's mana ran out, he finally put this half-spiritual vein into the space. The moment Li Zhirui entered the space, he found that the spiritual energy in the space was much richer than before, probably not much different from the spiritual energy emitted by the first-level middle-grade spiritual vein. He didn't find any difference no matter how much more he put in. Moreover, the situation of the family did not allow Li Zhirui to stay in the space for a long time. He took a rough look and left the space. Chapter 3 Leaving. While the Li family was busy packing up and preparing to leave Bailang County, the main peak of the beast control sect, Wanling Mountain, was facing a huge crisis. The Yuanying cultivator of the Baiyu sect was leading the sect disciples to frantically attack the mountain protection formation. Once the formation was broken, it was conceivable what the fate of the beast control sect would be. "Brother Zhao, you should take the true disciples with you now and activate the teleportation formation in the secret room to leave the sect," the head of the beast control sect said as he handed over the stored ring in his hand. Zhao Yu, the youngest giant and cultivator of the beast control sect, was also the most promising golden root genius in the beast control sect who could break through the Yuanying stage. It was a pity that Zhao Yu was born too late. Even though he rose very quickly and formed a golden elixir in less than 100 years, he was now more than 200 years old and was in the late giant stage. But unfortunately, the Yuanying cultivator of the Baiyu sect turned out. In fact, the moment the Yuanying cultivator appeared in the Baiyu sect, the beast control sect knew that the other party would never let them go, so during this period, the beast control sect had been preparing various spiritual objects so that the sect could make a comeback. But what no one expected was that the White Jade sect would act so quickly. The day after the nascent soul cultivator broke through, he attacked them directly without even consolidating his realm. He didn't give the beast taming sect any chance at all. The stored ring that the sect master gave to Zhao Yu contained a large number of spirit stones, techniques, various spirit objects and spirit seeds. The most important of these was the beast taming sect's fundamental technique, the 10,000 Spirits Sutra. "Brother, I want to stay." Before Zhao Yu finished speaking, A petite female cultivator rushed in with an uneasy look and said, "Master, all the eggs and cubs of the spirit beasts above the third rank in the sect have been collected." The master nodded and said, "Junior Sister Zhang, you are the most talented in the sect in raising beasts, and these spirit beasts are left to you to take care of." Seeing that Zhao Yu was about to speak, the master frowned and ordered with a sullen face, "Junior brother Zhao, take Junior Sister Zhang and the disciples out of the sect immediately. Only if you are still alive can the beast-taming sect continue." Zhao Yu's eyes were full of tears, but in the pleading eyes of the master, he could only turn around heavily, as if he was carrying a huge stone weighing thousands of pounds, and walked forward slowly. "Hurry up!" Zhao Yu trembled all over and ran out with Junior Sister Zhang. "The future of the beast control sect is in your hands." After the two men disappeared, the head of the sect muttered to himself, and then soared into the sky with a firm look, staring directly at the Yuanying of the Baiyu sect, who was standing in the air and had not taken action. This night was destined to be a night of blood and fire. When the sun rose and the sky was bright, the Wanling Mountain, which was originally full of vitality and lush, was covered with corpses and flesh. This also means that the beast control sect, which has lasted for thousands of years, disappeared in the long river of history from this day on. While the monks of the beast control sect were fighting bloody battles, more than 50 monks of the Bailang Li family had all arrived at the East Lake. Li Shiking saw that everyone was reluctant to leave, and comforted them. "As long as we are still here, the Li family is here." Having said that, Li Shiking's eyes were like those of others, and he was reluctant to leave this place where he had lived for hundreds of years. "Let's go." Li Shiking was the first to board the spirit ship, and Li Zhirui and other clansmen followed in. Half a quarter of an hour later, the spirit ship took off and flew towards the vast sea in the east. "Uncle Ren, what's going on with these kids on the boat?" Li Zhirui approached Li Shiren and asked in a low voice. The Li family has two second-level spiritual ships, both of which are standard spiritual ships that are 30 meters long and 5 meters wide. In the spiritual ship where Li Zhirui is, except for more than 20 cultivators, the rest are children who look only a few years old, probably several hundred people. They are all secular clansmen who have not yet tested their spiritual roots. This time we take them away, and we also hope that there will be a few clansmen with spiritual roots among them. Li Shiren pointed to another spiritual ship and said, "On that spiritual ship are young people in their 20s. When they arrive at a Banyan Island, they can better adapt to the environment and then continue the family line." Li Zhirui suddenly realized, but what is the Banyan Island? Because of his better qualifications, Li Zhirui is very familiar with Li Shiren, so he asked directly. "This is a branch of the family that was specially opened overseas 100 years ago. There are more than 30,000 secular clansmen, more than 20 cultivators, and a foundation-building cultivator on the island. Because the island is full of large banyan trees, it is called the Banyan Island. Since they have decided to go to the Banyan Island, there is no need to hide this matter. The Banyan Island is 20,000 miles northeast of Bailang County, but it is not far from the Zuinidan continent, only more than 200 miles. There is a giant force called Yuan Mingzong over there." With Li Shiren's introduction, Li Zhirui and others have a general understanding of the Banyan Island and nearby forces. The strength of the Yuan Mingzong is not as good as that of the beast-taming sect. It was only a few decades ago that the first giant and cultivator appeared, so it itself is still a vassal of a large giant and force. The territory controlled by the Yuan Mingzong, in addition to the 500 li square territory allocated to it by its lord, is some scattered immortal cultivation families on the sea. Because it is on the sea, coupled with its own lack of strength, the Yuan Mingzong's control over these families is not very strong. In addition, there are 3 immortal cultivation families near the Daring Island, all of which are foundation-building forces, and the relationship between them is very ordinary. "Okay, you guys take a rest first. When you get to the Daring Island, there will be no time to rest." Li Shiren interrupted the topic. Li Zhirui walked to the side of the boat silently, looking at the dark and deep ocean below, which seemed to contain a huge crisis. As a family member in the coastal area, Li Zhirui is not unfamiliar with the ocean. He knows that this vast sea area called the Infinite Sea is different from the Zuinidan continent. This is not a territory dominated by the human race. Apart from the offshore, the real masters of the Infinite Sea are countless sea monsters and the talented and powerful dragons. In Bailang County, there is a small beast tide every 10 years. Then the beast tide to be faced on the Daring Island on the sea may be several times stronger, right? But how did a dozen cultivators on the island survive the impact of the beast tide? As he was thinking, Li Zhirui suddenly remembered one thing. In the past few years, the clan leader and Jiugu brought back a large number of spiritual materials, all of which were taken from the Sea tribe. In other words, when the big Banyan Island encounters a beast tide, the clan will send people to support it. 3 foundation building monks, plus more than 20 key training monks, can stop the beast tide. The beast tide on the big Banyan Island should not be as terrible as imagined. Are you thinking about the beast tide? At some point, Li Zhirui walked to Li Zhirui. After years of getting along, Li Zhirui naturally understood the temperament of his nephew. To put it nicely, it is to be prepared for danger in times of peace. To put it bluntly, it is to worry about nothing. Li Zhirui nodded, hoping to get an answer from Li Zhirui. The other 3 families are all on the east side of the big Banyan Island. With just this sentence, Li Zhirui understood. Because these 3 families attracted firepower for the Li family, the beast tide encountered by the big Banyan Island was naturally not that terrible. Don't think too much. Banyan Island is a good place. Maybe the family will have a better development. Yes, Li Zhirui said very firmly. He believed that the family would definitely have a better development after leaving the Beastmaster sect that exploited the family like a feudal landlord. Seeing Li Zhirui's confidence, Li Zhirui seemed to be infected and showed a bright smile on his face. Maybe this generation of ZHI will really bring a bright future to the family. Li Zhirui thought so. I didn't expect to meet so many old friends after opening a new book. Thank you for your support. Thank you so much. Chapter 4 Arrival. It takes some time to reach the destination of more than 20,000 miles even by spirit ship. When the spirit ship flew halfway, a little white light suddenly flashed in front of Li Zhirui's eyes, which immediately woke up the sleepy Li Zhirui. Uncle Ren, look at what that is outside. Li Zhirui hurriedly sent a message. Li Zhirui, who was driving the spirit ship, followed Li Zhirui's words and looked. When he saw clearly what the white light was, he was stunned for a moment, and his face was suddenly filled with surprise. This is Cloudfish. After a quick response, Li Zhirui didn't care about Li Zhirui anymore, and quickly activated the communication talisman to tell Li Zhirui on another ship about it. Li Zhirui always felt that he seemed to have heard the word Cloudfish somewhere, but he couldn't remember it no matter how hard he racked his brains. It was not until all the cultivators were awakened, the spirit ship was suspended, and the 3 foundation building cultivators took action to capture these cloudfish that Li Zhirui remembered what cloudfish were when he saw their appearance clearly. Cloudfish is a very precious and rare first-class spiritual fish. Although its rank is very low, it has a very high value. Because cloudfish grows in the clouds and feeds on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, its body does not contain a trace of impurities and is very pure. In addition to being used for cooking, it can also be swallowed directly to increase the mana of the cultivator. And unlike elixirs, it has drug resistance and elixir poison. However, due to the rarity of cloudfish, it is rare to see people selling it on the market. There are even rumors that cloudfish have become extinct, so Li Zhirui thought about it for a long time but couldn't remember it. Half an hour later, the cloudfish in this area were plundered by 3 foundation building cultivators. Ho ha! Li Zhirui laughed and returned to the spiritual ship. He came to Li Zhirui's side, patted his shoulder and said, "Good boy. If it weren't for you, we would have missed this great opportunity. I was too flustered before and didn't take care of the happy event of your breakthrough to the late stage of key training. I didn't expect you to make such a great contribution to the family." The patriarch Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui with a look of relief and appreciation. After a moment of silence, he said, "Since you discovered this cloudfish, I will reward you with 2 pairs of cloudfish as a celebration of your breakthrough. This is what you, the clan leader, caught." "It has nothing to do with me," Li Zhirui hurriedly refused. He was worried that he could not keep such precious cloudfish alive. "If it weren't for you, how could we catch cloudfish?" Seeing that Li Zhirui was still trying to refuse, Li Zhirui waved his hand and said without any room for rebuttal, "Okay, it's decided. Thank you, clan leader." Seeing this, Li Zhirui had no choice but to take the 2 pairs of cloudfish. He thought that after reaching the destination, he would go to ask his uncle Li Zhirui, who is the best in animal breeding in the family, for advice. The rest of the journey was very peaceful, and there were no more accidents. However, this made several clan members of the same age as Li Zhirui more envious of his good luck. At present, there are 13 clan members of the same generation as Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui ranks 9th in age. And there are 4 underage brothers and sisters below him. As for the 8 brothers and sisters above, the oldest is already in his 30s or 40s, and the youngest is only a few months older than Li Zhirui. 9th brother, you are so lucky. Li Zhirui, who ranked 8th and was considered to be on good terms with him, approached Li Zhirui and said with envy. Li Zhirui smiled, Mina, good luck will soon come to you, don't worry, ha ha ha, then I'll borrow your good words. Li Zhirui laughed loudly, looking particularly happy. At the same time, many clansmen withdrew their gazes. We'll be at Banyan Island soon. Li Zhirui's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. One by one, they couldn't wait to walk to the side of the boat and look at the island not far away. Uncle Ren, Banyan Island doesn't look small. Why hasn't it been occupied by other families before? Li Zhirui asked in confusion. Banyan Island is 300 miles long from north to south and more than 150 miles wide from east to west. You can vaguely see a high mountain range in the east and tall banyan trees all over the mountain. Li Zhirui did not answer the question immediately, but asked, do you still remember your 15th uncle? Li Zhirui nodded. He did remember this uncle, but if he remembered correctly, he died a few years ago, right? The reason why the Big Banyan Island was not occupied by other forces is that the spiritual veins on the island are too deep. If it weren't for the 15th uncle's soul-seeking beast, we wouldn't know that there were 3 first-level spiritual veins hidden on the island. Li Zhirui did not react much to this number, because as far as he knew, Bailang County not only had more spiritual veins, but also a second-level spiritual vein. All first-level spiritual veins? Then the spiritual energy on the island is probably not enough for the family cultivators to breathe. The spiritual vein grade corresponds to the cultivator realm one by one, from the lowest first-level spiritual vein to the highest 9th-level spiritual vein, corresponding to key training, foundation building, golden elixir, uniting, transformation, refining emptiness, fusion, Mahayana, and tribulation. The spiritual energy generated by a first-level spiritual vein can meet the cultivation needs of up to 15 key training cultivators, but for a foundation-building cultivator, it can only meet 1 at most. The 3 first-level spiritual veins on the island cannot satisfy the key training members of the Li family, not to mention that the Li family also has 4 foundation-building cultivators. Don't worry, the family has completely moved to the Banyan Island this time, and the spiritual stones bra can upgrade 1 spiritual vein to the 2nd level. Li Zhirui patted Li Zhirui on the back and said unhappily, young man, don't think too much, so many of our elders are still alive. Got it. Li Zhirui also knew that he had the problem of thinking too much, but this has been there since his previous life and cannot be changed for a while. Who is coming? The moment the 2 spiritual ships were suspended in the air on the Banyan Island, a vigilant shout came from the island. Second brother, it's only been a few years since we last saw each other, and you have forgotten me, your younger brother. Li Zhirui flew out of the spiritual ship and pretended to be very sad. Li Zhirui and other juniors stared at Uncle Ren in amazement. Although Li Zhirui usually did not have the majesty of an elder, it was the first time they saw him being so unserious. Ahem, Li Zhirui stepped out to remind them, and then said, let's go to the island first, and settle the secular clansmen first. When Li Zhirui heard this and looked at the figures on the spirit ship, he knew that the family had encountered a crisis, and it was a very serious crisis, otherwise he would not have brought so many clansmen to Banyan Island. He immediately released a formation and let the spirit ship come in quickly. 5th brother, what happened in Bailang County? Li Zhirui asked worriedly. Li Zhirui sighed and told the whole story. At the end, he forced a smile and said, it's good this way. At least all the clansmen are together now, and they don't have to see each other for 10 years. In order to prevent the clansmen on Banyan Island from alienating from the main family, the clansmen stationed on Banyan Island will be replaced every 10 years, and the excuse to the outside world is that they are traveling. And in order to keep it secret, only a few core senior members of the family know the complete route. That's right, and Banyan Island is not necessarily worse than Bailang County, Li Zhirui also echoed. At this time, the monks stationed on the island also heard the noise and rushed over. When they saw their tribesmen whom they had not seen for many years, their first reaction was surprise, but they soon felt something was wrong. Just as they were about to ask, Li Zhirui said, let's talk about it in the main hall. Chapter 5 Busy. Li Zhirui ordered Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui to settle the secular clansmen on the spirit ship, and he led Li Zhirui and other clansmen to the gathering place on the island, which was the central area of the Big Banyan Island. It was also here that Li Zhirui and others saw another foundation-building cultivator in the family, Li Zhirui, who was of the same generation as Li Shiking. Second brother, what happened to the family? Li Zhirui, who was pacing back and forth, greeted Li Shiking with a sad face as soon as he saw him. Seeing that all the clansmen on the island were there, Li Shiking did not hide anything and told them the whole story. It's good that the people are fine, and after so many years of development, the big Banyan Island can already be used as the clan land of the family. Li Zhirui's eyebrows suddenly became much lighter, and he said from the heart. Well, Li Shiking nodded, and then said to the other clansmen, it's still a while before dawn, you all go back and rest. As for whether there are enough rooms, Li Shiking did not consider this issue. After all, for a cultivator, it is a very normal thing to use the sky as a blanket and the ground as a bed. Brother, did you wipe off all traces before you left? Li Zhirui asked with some concern after everyone left. Don't worry, we sprinkled the chaos incense powder before we left, and the footprints were cleaned up. Chaos incense powder is a spiritual object specially used to confuse the breath, which can hinder the tracking of certain spells and spiritual beasts. Of course, it doesn't mean that everything will be fine after using the chaos incense powder, but it's impossible for the Bailang sect to keep an eye on a foundation-building family, right? Li Zhirui nodded, and then talked to Li Shiking about the family's development on the Banyan Island and the surrounding environment, trying his best to let Li Shiking understand the situation under the rule of Yuan Mingzong more quickly and comprehensively. By the way, since the family has decided to move to the Banyan Island, the spiritual energy on the island must be insufficient. How do you plan to solve it? Li Shiking smiled and said, the family has brought all the spiritual stones, including the spiritual stones placed beside the spiritual veins for nourishment. Don't worry about the spiritual energy problem. The so-called nourishment is actually to place the spiritual stones without spiritual energy beside the spiritual veins and use the power of the spiritual veins to charge them. However, this process is very slow. It takes almost 100 years to charge a low-grade spiritual stone. After the family has removed the 100,000 spiritual stones for the spiritual veins to promote, there may not be many spiritual stones left, right? Although Li Zhirui has been staying on the Banyan Island for many years, he is not completely ignorant of the family's situation. He knows very well that the family cannot save many spiritual stones every year. Li Shiking's face suddenly became gloomy. After a while, he smiled bitterly and said, take your time. The next morning, accompanied by the sound of the bronze bell, the cultivators opened their eyes one by one, got up and walked towards the main hall of the family. After everyone arrived, Li Shiking spoke up. You all know the current situation of the family. In order to recover as soon as possible, we will be very busy in the next period of time. I hope everyone can bear this pressure. I believe that the Li family will never be defeated by this difficulty. Instead, they will take this opportunity to be reborn from the ashes. Li Shiking's words calmed down the anxious family members, including Li Zhirui. Next, we will assign tasks. Li Shiking said one by one what he had thought of last night and what he had to do. First, settle the spirit beasts brought from Bailang County. Li Zhirui will lead the team, and Li Zhirui, appease the spirit beasts. The Li family has not cultivated many kinds of spirit beasts in recent years. There are only 6 first-level spirit beasts: red feather chicken, blue-headed fish, white silkworm, black duck, wasp, and tuskpig. However, from now on, the cloudfish caught on the road must be added. Although there are not many kinds, they are the largest source of spirit stones for the Li family every year, accounting for almost 40% of the income. The reason why the Li family has only cultivated these 6 kinds of spiritual beasts for hundreds of years is that almost all the vassal forces of the beast-taming sect are cultivating spiritual beasts. In order to avoid competition in the market, the family deliberately avoided other forces. Second, it is not a simple matter to cultivate spiritual beasts. The time and energy spent, as well as the various spiritual objects used to feed the spiritual beasts, have limited the Li family's idea of expanding the scale. Of course, the Li family has also cultivated some second-level spiritual beasts on a small scale over the years, but these are not for sale, but as contracted spiritual beasts for the children of the family. Next, there is the task of opening up spiritual fields on the plain under the mountain in the east and planting the spiritual medicines and spiritual grains brought from Bailang County. The spiritual vein under the mountain is the least developed of the 3 spiritual veins on Banyan Island. Because there are only more than 20 tribesmen on the island, It is very good to be able to manage 2 spiritual veins. If there are more, you have to squeeze the time for cultivation. For a cultivator, cultivation is the foundation. How could the family do such a thing of digging its own grave? However, it can be predicted that the harvest of spiritual medicine and spiritual grain this year will not be very good. After all, the Li family moved too hastily, and the root system will definitely be damaged during the transplant. In addition to these 2 most important things, the rest are building houses, upgrading spiritual veins, etc., which are not too urgent or do not require too many clansmen. Huh? Uncle Ren, are there other species of spiritual beasts cultivated on the island? Li Zhirui and others came to a large lake and saw spiritual fish swimming in the lake. Under this lake of dozens of miles, the last spiritual vein on the Banyan Island is hidden. In fact, in addition to the title of genius, Li Zhirui has another shining point in the family, that is, the affinity of spiritual beasts. As long as the spiritual beasts cultivated by the cultivators see Li Zhirui for the first time, they will unconsciously get close to him, unlike other cultivators, who need to pay a certain price to do so. As for the reason, no one can tell clearly. After all, the Li family is just a small foundation-building family. In addition, in order to protect Li Zhirui, the family did not make a big fanfare to find the answer. However, because of this physique, Li Zhirui is very good at cultivating spiritual beasts. He can be said to be the most talented among the ZHI generation of the clan. Well, the family has cultivated 2 first-level spiritual beasts on the Big Banyan Island in recent years, namely whitewater shrimp and flower scale fish, which sold well under the reign of Yuan Mingzong. Li Zhirui obviously knows the affairs of the Big Banyan Island very well, and he knows them like the back of his hand. However, it is important to place the original 6 spiritual beasts now. Li Zhirui replied and began to arrange the formation. First, the spiritual energy originally locked in the lake should be led to the shore to create a suitable environment for several terrestrial spiritual beasts. In addition, he also needs to change the formation in the lake to divide the area for the bluehead fish and black duck to live. Li Zhirui not only knows the formation, but is also the only second-level formation master in the family. And this is also the fundamental reason why the patriarch handed over the matter of placing the spiritual beasts to Li Zhirui. After everything is done, it is the turn of Li Zhirui and others to appear. Li Zhirui walked to the place designated for the tusk pigs to live, and put 25 tusk pigs of all sizes from the spirit beast bag into the pigsty one by one. Because of the unfamiliar environment, the tusk pigs were very uneasy, and they kept humming and groaning. The 2 breeding pigs had red eyes, which was a sign that the tusk pigs were going to attack. Fortunately, at this time, Li Zhirui's special physique took effect, and coupled with the temptation of food, the tusk pigs calmed down. Li Zhirui secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The tusk pigs were not docile spirit beasts. If they were really angry, his small body would not be able to bear it. As for the other spirit beasts, it is much easier to place them than the tusk pigs. Just let them out and feed them some food to appease them. This article will be slow to heat up, so please be patient and ask for follow-up reading, collection, and recommendation as usual. Follow-up reading is related to the recommendation of the new book period, which is very, very important. Please everyone. Chapter 6 Consultation. After initially pacifying the spirit beasts, Li Zhirui and others could not leave immediately, because the next few days would be the key to determine whether the spirit beasts had adapted to the new environment. Fortunately, the Li family had already summed up a lot of methods for the cultivation of these 6 spirit beasts, and there was no trouble. In the future, they would arrange a few clansmen to come and feed the spirit beasts every day. After arriving at the Banyan Island, Li Zhirui, who had a little free time, finally had the opportunity to enter the space and take care of various spirit creatures. At the same time, driven by Li Zhirui's breakthrough, Da Qing, who had fallen into deep sleep, also woke up from his cultivation. Breakthrough, Li Zhirui, who was casting the spirit rain technique, flew over immediately after hearing the familiar voice, and looked at Da Qing with a look of surprise. Li Zhirui certainly expected Da Qing to make further progress. After all, this was also an improvement in his strength, but the probability of this happening was not high, so Li Zhirui did not hold too much hope. Like Li Shiqing, who broke through the foundation building stage and also broke through the foundation building stage of the contracted spirit beast, there were no more than 3 people in the 300 years since the establishment of the Li family. Da Qing didn't respond to Li Zhirui at all, or rather, With his current intelligence, he couldn't respond to such questions, so he just kept calling out to himself. Greedy ghost, Li Zhirui said unhappily, but he didn't treat Dekking badly. He took out a few spiritual fruits and put them in Dekking's mouth. In fact, this was the main reason why Dekking was able to break through. Because of the existence of the space, Li Zhirui never treated Dekking badly in feeding it. In fact, its treatment was definitely the best among the spiritual beasts of the key training clan members in the family, and it never lacked spiritual fruits. Let Dekking eat the spiritual fruits. Li Zhirui continued to tend the spiritual fields, and when everything was done, he took Dekking out of the space. Let Dekking get familiar with the environment in the temporary residence, and Li Zhirui began to practice today. After finishing the spiritual beast business, it didn't mean that Li Zhirui had nothing to do. The family had just moved to Banyan Island, and there were so many things to do, so soon Li Zhirui and others were captured as soldiers again. For a long time afterwards, the more than 70 cultivators of the Li family became extremely busy. Apart from daily practice, they had almost no free time. However, because of this, the clan members forgot the sadness of leaving their hometown in their busy lives, and also developed a sense of belonging to the Banyan Island. As time went by, the Li family took root in the Banyan Island, and the clan members no longer needed to be as busy as they were some time ago. On the same day, the first second-level spiritual vein appeared on the Banyan Island. From then on, everyone no longer needed to rely on spiritual stones to practice. As the clan leader, Li Zhirui once again gave a speech. The final point was that the family would have a better future, and then most of the clan members could do what they should do. However, Li Zhirui was not among these clan members, because according to the rules of the family, those in the late stage of key training were qualified to serve as elders. Of course, there were limited positions, and the family could not have so many elders, but in order to ensure that there would be no problems with a handover of responsibilities, clan members in the late stage of key training were allowed to listen in and familiarize themselves with family affairs. This was not mandatory. After all, there were always some people who did not like to be in power, but Li Zhirui had just broken through, and this was the first high-level meeting held after the family's misfortune, so he had to attend both for public and private reasons. Yesterday I received a message from my fifth brother. On the same day we left Bailang County, the beast-taming sect had been destroyed by the Baiyu sect. It is said that only 1 in 10 disciples of the beast-taming sect are still alive. As soon as Li Zhirui opened his mouth, he threw out a thunderbolt, shocking everyone so much that they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Although everyone had expected it, when they really heard the news, they couldn't help but feel panic and luck. Second brother, how does the Baiyu sect treat the Z family, the Zhang family and other families? The first to speak was Li Zhirui, who had the highest seniority. Pay a penalty of 10,000 spirit stones and give up the clan land. The first one is easy to say. 10,000 spirit stones is nothing to these foundation-building families. But giving up the clan land is tantamount to cutting off the foundation of these families, or the Baiyu sect wants to solve these families without bloodshed. When everyone heard this, their faces were full of relief. If they hadn't reacted quickly and decisively enough, they would probably have ended up like this, right? However, Li Zhirui had some concerns in his heart, but no one mentioned it for a long time. So he could only bite the bullet and said, "Clan leader, has the Baiyu sect issued a wanted order for our families that fled in advance?" He found out that there were Yuanying cultivators in the Baiyu sect, and the family that fled was definitely not the only Li family. Although the Banyan Island was far enough from Bailang County, and there were also several forces on the mainland between the two places, no one could guarantee that the news of the Li family on the Banyan Island would not reach the Baiyu sect. Li Zhirui's words made the atmosphere in the main hall, which had eased a little, become solemn again. Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui with a little surprise, and then smiled and said, "There are talented people in every generation, and it seems that we are old." As a junior, Li Zhirui couldn't agree to this casually, so he could only smile awkwardly and try to reduce his presence as much as possible. "I will let my fifth brother send someone to inquire about this matter. To be on the safe side, the family should act cautiously before getting accurate information," Li Zhirui said. In addition to this matter, the most important thing is how the Li family should develop next. In this regard, Li Zhirui, who is most familiar with Yunping's How under the jurisdiction of Baiyu sect, gave his own suggestions. Yunbo, Yun, and Yunqing counties are all well developed because they are near the sea, but the best developed one is Yunqing County. In addition to the fact that Yunqing County is located in the middle of the three counties near the sea and is the transit point between the northern and southern states, it is also because the spiritual veins in Yunqing County are concentrated. The three second-order spiritual veins bring rich spiritual energy to Yunqing Market, which also attracts many cultivators. So if the family wants to open a store, Yunqing Market is the best choice. Then the elders discussed this topic, and as a junior, Li Zhirui only needed to listen honestly. Zhirui, what do you think about this? Maybe it was because of the previous reminder that Li Shiking noticed Li Zhirui, and now he actually specifically asked him to answer. Li Zhirui combined what he had just heard, and after making a mental draft, he said, I think the family should change its industrial structure. In Bailang County, because of the existence of the leader of the beast-taming sect, the spirit beasts cultivated by various vassal forces are sold as raw materials, and then processed by the beast-taming sect and made into spirit food for sale. When Li Zhirui broke through the 6th level of key training, he was taken by Li Zhirui to the restaurant opened by the beast-taming sect and tasted 2 spirit foods. One was ginseng stewed chicken made from red feather chicken, and the other was crystal roasted meat made from tusk pig. The taste is quite good, and it can also increase the mana of the cultivator, but the price is not cheap. 2 dishes cost 20 spirit stones. But according to Li Zhirui's observation, a red feathered chicken can make at least 6 ginseng stewed chickens, and a tusk pig can make 50 crystal roasted meats. At the price of the Li family selling these 2 spirit beasts, the beast-taming sect only needs to sell a few spirit foods to make a profit. Chapter 7 Market. Since the Li family has already gotten rid of the control of the beast-taming sect, there is no need to focus on selling raw materials and making this little money. After Li Zhirui expressed his thoughts, everyone present began to think about it. They had to admit that they were very tempted by this proposal. After all, who doesn't want to earn more spirit stones so that the family can develop better? However, they also have certain concerns about this matter, that is, the Li family does not have a recipe for making spirit food. Just like alchemy requires a recipe, refining requires drawings, and array formations require array patterns, spirit food also requires a recipe, and it cannot be made casually like mortals cooking. Moreover, getting the recipe is only the first step. It is necessary to let the spirit chef practice continuously like cultivating an alchemist, so that a qualified spirit food can be made. In this process, a large amount of spirit stones will inevitably be consumed. If it succeeds, then these costs will be earned back sooner or later, but I am afraid that no one in the family has this talent. As for how to get the recipe? Yunping Prefecture is not Bailang County. Many things are monopolized and prohibited by the beast-taming sect. The Li family can go to the market to buy spiritual recipes, and then arrange for the clan members to learn, concentrate resources to train them, and let them become spiritual chefs as soon as possible. Although the Li family has been passed down for more than 300 years, it can be regarded as a little bit of heritage, but the development of cultivation skills is very general. In addition to the second-level inheritance of beast control, formation, and spiritual plants, the 3 skills of alchemy, refining, and talisman making are only first-level inheritance. As for the non-mainstream skills such as spiritual chefs and puppeteers, there is no inheritance at all. Therefore, many senior executives have doubts about this, worrying that they will invest a lot of spiritual stones but will not see any signs of success. What do you think of this idea? Li Shiking's words triggered a heated discussion among the crowd, but Li Zhirui, as the proposer, stood in the corner without saying a word. Li Shiking did not intervene, but when the supporters gained the upper hand, he suddenly knocked on the handrail and interrupted the dispute. Since more people support this, let's give it a try. Li Shiking's identity is not only the patriarch, but also the strongest person in the family and the hero who saved the family, so as soon as he opened his mouth, the opponents immediately shut up. Let Shiren and Zhirui do the task of going to the market to buy the spiritual recipe book. Li Shiking looked at Li Zhirui with a smile and said, "You are responsible for this matter." Li Zhirui looked up in surprise. He really didn't expect that Li Shiking would give him such an important matter to decide. As a result, Li Shiren, a foundation-building cultivator, became an entourage. Others were also surprised by Li Shiking's decision, but due to Li Shiking's prestige, it was difficult to reject, and the atmosphere suddenly became strange. Zhirui will definitely live up to the family's high expectations. Li Zhirui knew that he couldn't refuse, so he simply didn't refuse and took on this task neatly. The next things to discuss were all trivial matters, so the meeting ended soon. After everyone left, Li Zhirui came to Li Zhiren and asked, "Uncle Ren, shall we go to the market tomorrow?" "Okay," Li Zhiren agreed readily. With his personality, he would not have any negative emotions just because he was inferior to Li Zhirui in this matter. He even felt a little proud, because he had taught Li Zhirui all these years. Now that Li Zhirui has made progress and is valued by Li Shiking, his chief master and uncle naturally feels proud of it. After returning to the newly built courtyard, Li Zhirui first checked the situation of the cloudfish and found that although their condition was still a little sluggish, it was much better than yesterday. He finally put down his heart. In order for the two pairs of cloudfish to survive, Li Zhirui deliberately built a courtyard in the shade of the mountain, so it was far away from the gathering place of the family. He also asked Li Zhiren to help him set up a cloud formation. The jade slips record that cloudfish can mature in 1 year, and each reproduction will not exceed 10 offspring. So in order to maintain a certain scale, it will take at least 2 years before cloudfish can be enjoyed. Thinking of the delicious food described in the classics, Li Zhirui was eager to try. Fortunately, he had good self-control. He reluctantly retracted his gaze and entered the quiet room to start practicing today. The next morning, Li Zhirui had just arrived at the agreed location when Li Zhiren appeared. "Let's go." Li Zhiren didn't waste any words and directly released his spiritual beast, the jade-billed eagle, and took Li Zhirui to Yunqingfang City. The jade-billed eagle is a second-level spiritual beast in the foundation building period, and it is also Li Zhiren's only spiritual beast. Although practicing the Wanling Sutra, every time you break through a major realm, you can contract a spiritual beast, and it will bring certain benefits to the cultivator. But there are actually very few cultivators who really do this, because cultivating spiritual beasts requires a large amount of spiritual objects, but the cultivators themselves cannot get enough resources, so how can they take out a lot of resources to cultivate spiritual beasts? As far as Li Zhirui knew, among the several foundation-building monks born in the Li family over the past 300 years, except for a few ancestors, none of them cultivated a second spirit beast. The flying speed of the jade-billed eagle was extremely fast, and it took only a quarter of an hour to reach a distance of 200 miles. "Thank you for your hard work." Li Zhiren patted the jade-billed eagle, fed it a dried spirit fish as a reward, and then put it into the spirit beast bag. Li Zhirui, on the other hand, watched the monks coming in and out of the gate of the market, and had a more accurate understanding of the liveliness of this market. Speaking of which, Li Zhirui had never seen much of the world, because none of the several major markets of the beast-taming sect was as lively and prosperous as the Yunqing market. "Uncle Ren, there are many monks coming and going in the market. If you really do the restaurant business, you will definitely make a lot of spirit stones," Li Zhirui said excitedly. Li Zhiren smiled and said, "The family doesn't even have a recipe book or a spiritual chef, and you're thinking of opening a restaurant." As they talked, the two walked into the market. What caught their eyes were all kinds of shops on both sides of the road. From the signs hanging on them, they could roughly know what they were selling. After taking a look, the two walked into a shop called Xuanfa Pavilion, which looked like a shop selling exercises or various cultivation techniques. As soon as they entered the door, a monk in a robe came up and greeted the two very warmly, saying, "What do you two distinguished guests need? Do you have a spiritual recipe book?" Li Zhiren asked. The monk was stunned for a moment, probably because he didn't expect someone to buy such an unpopular thing, but his professional quality was still very high, and he immediately said, "Yes, my Xuanfa Pavilion has a total of 27 first-level recipes and 8 second-level recipes. As for higher-level recipes, they are very rare things. This store may not be able to take them out, and it is useless for the Li family to buy them. Take out all the first-level recipes and let me see them," Li Zhiren said. "Then please follow me." After saying that, he walked in front to lead the way. He led the two into the small room and brewed a cup of tea for them. Then he went to get the spiritual recipe catalog and introduction. A moment later, he came in with a jade slip and said with a smile, "Everything the two distinguished guests want is here. Please read. Please collect. Please recommend. Thank you for your recommendation votes." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Alchemy. Ginseng stewed chicken, crystal roasted pork, wine shrimp, 5 treasure soup, 27 recipes were displayed in front of the two people, and the price ranged from 100 to 500 spirit stones. Eru, which recipes do you think we should buy? Li Zhirui secretly transmitted the message. Ginseng stewed chicken, crystal roasted pork, wine shrimp, 5 treasure soup, 3 mysterious fish balls. Li Zhirui reported more than a dozen recipes in a row, which were carefully selected based on the 8 spirit beasts currently raised by the family. Li Zhirui nodded secretly in his heart. He was thinking about the same thing. He looked up and asked, "Is there a first-level spirit wine recipe?" The monk smiled even more and said repeatedly, "Yes, yes, please wait a moment, senior, wait, please help me get some samples. I want to see the recipe for water-based alchemy." Li Zhirui saw this and said quickly, "Okay." After that, the man walked out of the room. Li Zhirui frowned slightly and said disapprovingly, "I have no objection to your choice of alchemy, but why do you choose the most difficult water method of alchemy? Uncle Ren, have you forgotten that I don't have a fire spirit root?" Although not having a fire spirit root does not mean that there is no way to make an elixir, Li Zhirui happened to have both water and wood spirit roots. One restrains fire, and the other fears fire, which leads to Li Zhirui's inability to control the flame well, but the requirements for alchemy for flames are very high, and he can't go this way at all. Then why don't you consider other skills? You have a high talent in beast control. Li Zhirui's brows still did not relax. Obviously he did not approve of Li Zhirui's decision. Alchemy is not a simple matter, and water alchemy is more difficult, and it is more unconventional, and high-level recipes are very rare. If Li Zhirui takes this path, after breaking through a higher realm, he will have to modify the recipe himself, which is a waste of time and energy. Li Zhirui was silent now. He couldn't tell the second person that he had a portable space. Even if the person had a very good relationship with him, that wouldn't work. Li Zhirui had a headache. His nephew was obviously a person who was full of thoughts and worries, but he was extremely stubborn in some matters. "My two distinguished guests, here are the wine recipe and the pill recipe." Fortunately, the monk came back at this time, breaking up the strange atmosphere between the uncle and nephew. Li Zhirui couldn't wait to check the jade slip to see if he could find the pill recipe he wanted. Seeing him so eager, Li Zhirui sighed silently in his heart. The Huangaya pill and Yulang pill that increase mana, the Zishan pill that nourishes the soul, the Burksu pill that restores ki and blood. There are a total of 36 first-level water method pill recipes. Li Zhirui's eyes lit up when he saw them, and he wished he could get them all. It's a pity that Li Zhirui has only saved more than 300 spirit stones after practicing for many years, and can only choose 2 pill recipes at most. Fortunately, Li Zhirui knew the importance of the matter. He chose 2 of the recipes that were most beneficial to him at the moment, and there were corresponding spiritual medicines in the space. They were the jade spiritual pill that could be taken by both monks and spirit beasts, and the soul supplementing pill, which was in great demand in the market. The former could speed up his and Deking's cultivation, and the latter could be sold to earn spirit stones. After the payment and delivery, Li Zhirui had only a few dozen spirit stones left. Li Zhirui ignored Li Zhirui's choice and chose the turbidity-removing wine and white shaojiu from the spiritual wine recipe. Together with the spiritual recipe he had chosen before, Li Zhirui paid a total of 5,500 spirit stones. However, before leaving, the store gave Li Zhirui several packs of first-level spirit seeds, which together did not exceed 20 spirit stones. After leaving the store, Li Zhirui did not leave in a hurry, but took Li Zhirui to a corner of the market. On the way, the two did not speak, and just walked in silence. Soon, a scene of stalls on both sides of the road came into view. "Aren't you going to learn how to make alchemy with water? The spiritual medicine and spiritual water here are cheaper than those in the store, but it's up to you to identify whether they are real or fake," Li Zhirui said lightly. Li Zhirui's face lit up and he said, "Thank you, Uncle Ren. The family still has a few alchemy furnaces, so don't buy them." As he said that, he also handed over a storage bag and said, "Here are 100 spiritual stones. Remember to return it to me as soon as possible." Li Zhirui thanked him again, and then walked towards a stall with a large number of spiritual medicines with a happy pace. Jade root grass, hidden spiritual fruit. It takes a total of 5 spiritual medicines to make the jade spirit pill. The store sells 1 for 12 spiritual stones, but here only 11 are needed. Li Zhirui spent 110 spiritual stones to buy 10 portions of herbs, and another 20 spiritual stones to buy a gourd of spiritual water. In fact, This amount of materials is not enough for practice. Li Zhirui bought them mainly to cover the spiritual medicines in the space. After all, it is impossible for him to master alchemy just by looking at the pill formula, right? At the same time, Li Zhirui also noticed that there were several eyes following him since he bought the spiritual medicine, but when he returned to Li Zhirui, these eyes were instantly withdrawn. Li Zhirui's face showed no expression, but he took note of this matter in his heart, and warned himself that if he came alone next time, he must not be so ostentatious. "Are you done?" Li Zhirui asked. If not, he could go to the market again now. Seeing Li Zhirui nod, Li Zhirui took him out of the market. After returning to the Banyan Island, the two handed the recipes and wine recipes to the clan leader. "Do you have any ideas for the market? There are many monks coming and going in the market, and it is very lively. Although there are already several restaurants in the market, I found that they are mainly for monks to stay, so there is a large market for selling spiritual food, and the family raises spiritual beasts, which is our advantage." Li Zhirui talked freely, saying everything he observed and thought. Li Zhirui did not comment, but said, "Well, I understand. You have been busy all day, go back and rest first." Li Zhirui bowed to the two elders, then turned and left. "Do you agree with Zhirui's words?" Li Zhirui asked. Li Zhirui nodded. Zhirui's observation is very detailed, and what he said is also correct. Li Zhirui knew what was going on, and changed the subject, asking, "You are also aware of the current situation of the family. The resources for training spiritual chefs are limited, so we can only focus on training. Which clan members do you think are more suitable?" Li Zhirui thought about it seriously, said a few names, and then explained, "The requirements for spiritual chefs are not lower than those for alchemists, so the most important thing is the spiritual consciousness and the control of the fire." The clan members that Li Zhirui mentioned either have fire spiritual roots, or are in the late stage of key training and have relatively strong spiritual consciousness. At least one condition is met. "Well, let's take them." Li Zhirui thought about it and felt that these people were quite suitable. As for the two spiritual wine recipes, it would be easy to deal with because the Li family has a winemaker. Li Zhirui, the eldest brother of the Zhi generation, has a contracted spirit beast of the second-level wine monkey. In order to meet the needs of his own spirit beast, he took the family's only wine recipe to try, and finally he succeeded. The reason why the family did not train Li Zhirui and let him continue on the path of winemaker is mainly because the price of the spirit wine purchased by the Beastmaster sect is too low, and there is almost no profit, so the family gave up the idea. Friends are welcome to find bugs and give suggestions. I will correct the former and try to modify the latter. Thank you for your support. Chapter 9 Exercises. After Li Zhirui returned to the courtyard, he couldn't wait to take out the recipe of the Jade Spirit Pill. He planned to learn the recipe thoroughly in a short time and then start to refine the Jade Spirit Pill. So much so that in the next few days, Li Zhirui locked himself in the yard, not going out of the door, either trying to figure out the recipe or practicing the magic formula. Until 10 days later, Li Zhirui felt that he had thoroughly understood the recipe and had a certain idea about refining, so he was ready to start refining the Jade Spirit Pill. Li Zhirui first went to the warehouse to borrow a pill furnace, washed it with clean water, removed the fire in it, and avoided the conflict between water and fire during the alchemy process. Then he poured 1/10 of the spiritual water in the gourd into the pill furnace, took out several spiritual medicines needed to refine the Jade Spirit Pill, and according to the description of the pill recipe, first used magic power to extract the spiritual medicine preliminarily and remove the impurities. This step is the basis of water alchemy. Unlike fire refining, water refining requires monks to extract in the outside world instead of baking with spiritual fire. Soon, 5 groups of spiritual medicine essences were suspended in front of Li Zhirui, and then they were placed into the spiritual water in order, and finally the furnace lid was closed. Li Zhirui probed his consciousness into the furnace, observing the changes in the essence while pinching the magic formula to promote the fusion of the 5 groups of essences. This magic formula is the so-called alchemy technique. Li Zhirui only learned the 4 alchemy techniques of combination, fusion, separation, and condensation from the family's basics of alchemy. In addition to these 4 most basic magic formulas, some advanced alchemy techniques also have magic formulas that can further extract, amplify the efficacy, and reduce the toxicity of the elixir. This is why it is obviously the same elixir recipe, but the spiritual medicines refined have a huge difference in efficacy and toxicity. When the 5 groups of essences were completely combined into one, Li Zhirui's magic formula changed, as if there was an invisible hand stirring the essence of the spiritual medicine and merging the different medicinal effects. And this process determines the effectiveness of the jade spirit pill. Time passed little by little, and when the essence showed a hint of jade color, it meant that the essence was almost fused. Li Zhirui was delighted, but before he could make any further moves, the essence suddenly dispersed. Li Zhirui's face froze. Although he had never thought that he would succeed in his first attempt at alchemy, he still felt a little unhappy about the failure. After calming down, Li Zhirui stood up and activated the photostone that he had put away long ago, and began to check where he went wrong. After several times, Li Zhirui finally found out what went wrong. He was a bit slower when performing the alchemy division technique, and then failed. Li Zhirui let out a long breath of turbid air and put the mixture in the alchemy furnace into an empty gourd. Although these mixtures are failed products, it does not mean that they have become garbage. And this is also the difference between water refining and fire refining. If the water method of alchemy fails, the essence will merge with the spiritual water. But if the fire method fails, it will only turn into a pile of ashes. Although these mixtures have not been further extracted and have certain toxins, they contain spiritual energy. Although they are harmful to cultivators, they can be eaten by spiritual beasts with good physiques, or used to irrigate spiritual medicines. Li Zhirui, who possessed the space, would naturally not give this kind of thing to decking, but it was very good for watering the spiritual medicines in the space. Li Zhirui had done a good job in the previous steps of cleaning the furnace, putting in spiritual water, removing impurities, synthesizing essences, and integrating medicinal effects. When he saw the jade color appear, the spell changed, and the pill dividing spell was instantly played. The essence that was originally the size of a baby's fist was immediately divided into 10 parts, but before Li Zhirui could continue to work, the essence was scattered again. After personally trying it, Li Zhirui knew that the difficulty of alchemy was far greater than he had imagined, so that after he failed again, his mentality became very peaceful. Didn't people always say in the previous life that failure is the mother of success? Li Zhirui comforted himself, and then began to check the photostone to find where he made a mistake. Soon, he found the problem. The spell was pinched wrongly, resulting in the lack of cohesion of the spiritual essence after separation. This time, Li Zhirui did not continue to make the elixir, but recorded his previous mistakes and problems one by one, and prepared to find an opportunity to ask the family's alchemist. At the same time, he took out the basics of alchemy and the recipe, and compared them carefully to make sure that he had not made any mistakes or forgotten anything. Only then did he start to make the elixir again. Unfortunately, until the jade wheel rose to the sky tonight, Li Zhirui had not made the jade spirit pill. The closest time to success was because he had made the pill too many times and his mana was insufficient, which resulted in the final condensation pill art not being performed smoothly. The 50th attempt at alchemy failed. The reason for failure: insufficient mana. Li Zhirui wrote down the reason for the last failure, but a smile appeared on his face. Because this time the failure was not due to his mana or timing, but due to insufficient mana. If he had enough mana in the end, he would have succeeded very likely. It seems that I still have some talent in alchemy, otherwise, he would not have succeeded after only practicing 50 times. However, Li Zhirui looked at the spiritual medicine he had accumulated over the years, and found that most of it was gone in just one day. He felt distressed and helpless. The space appeared on the day when Li Zhirui broke through the first level of key training, and it has been 10 years since then. Most of the spiritual medicines he planted were the most common and common first-level spiritual medicines that only took 1 or 2 years to mature, so he had accumulated a lot of common spiritual medicines. Li Zhirui planted several spiritual medicines for refining the jade spirit pill in his space, but he got one of them too late and didn't have much stock. So he could only get about 70 or 80 materials, but after a day of squandering, there were only more than 20 left. As for why Li Zhirui didn't sell the spiritual medicine, that was because the market in Bailang County was too small, and the shops that bought spiritual medicines were either family-owned or beast-controlling sect-owned, and the prices were lower than one another, so he really didn't want to sell them at a low price. Li Zhirui dragged his tired body and fell directly on the bed without practicing. He fell into a dream soon. The next morning, Li Zhirui got up energetically, fed decking in half an hour, sprinkled the spiritual liquid in the spiritual field, and then hurriedly exited the space and sat cross-legged in front of the pill furnace. As he exhaled a breath of turbid air, Li Zhirui's state of mind became extremely calm. He poured in spiritual water, took in the 5 spiritual medicines, extracted them one by one, merged the essences, divided the pills, and finally used the pill condensation formula. A medicinal fragrance that Li Zhirui had never smelled before permeated from the pill furnace. Li Zhirui couldn't wait to open the pill furnace, and saw 5 round jade-colored spiritual pills floating in the clear spiritual water. Success! Li Zhirui's bright eyes were full of joy, and the smile on his face was even more brilliant. A furnace of pills can produce at most 10 spiritual pills, and Li Zhirui succeeded in 5 the first time, which is a very good result. Li Zhirui took out a jade bottle that had been prepared long ago, and used his magic power to take out a jade spiritual pill. As if treating a supreme treasure, he carefully put the spiritual pill into the jade bottle. Perhaps because of the successful experience, in the following time, Li Zhirui only failed 5 or 6 times. After consuming all the spiritual medicines, Li Zhirui's face turned slightly pale, and a trace of fatigue appeared between his eyebrows, but his spirit was extremely full. In the market, 1 jade spirit pill sells for 3 spirit stones. Even if there are 10 pills in a bottle, it will be 2 spirit stones cheaper. With the number of pills I have now, not only will I not lose money, I will even start to earn spirit stones, Li Zhirui said to himself excitedly. Chapter 10 Surprise. Li Zhirui looked at the dozens of Yulang pills in his hand, thought for a while, picked out 2 pills with the worst medicinal effects, put them into a jade bottle, and then hurried out of the courtyard. When he ran to Li Zhirui's courtyard, Li Zhirui took a deep breath and suddenly shouted excitedly, "Uncle Ren, I succeeded!" Li Zhirui, who was about to carve the formation flag, reacted immediately after hearing Li Zhirui's words. He didn't care about the formation flag in his hand. Like a whirlwind, he rushed to Li Zhirui in an instant and asked anxiously, "Did you refine the Yulang pill?" "Yes," Li Zhirui nodded affirmatively, and then handed the prepared jade bottle to Li Zhirui. This really succeeded. Li Zhirui opened the jade bottle and looked at the 2 pills lying at the bottom of the bottle, his face full of disbelief. Li Zhirui didn't know that Li Zhirui had practiced dozens of times before he succeeded. He thought that he only used those 10 materials to successfully refine the Yulang pill. Although the quality of these 2 jade spirit pills is average, they are all genuine first-level spiritual pills, which means that Li Zhirui has successfully refined the jade spirit pill. Good boy. Li Zhirui patted Li Zhirui's shoulder vigorously and said excitedly, "I will tell the clan leader to mobilize spiritual medicine from the family for you to practice." Li Zhirui's face froze. He gave the spiritual pill to Li Zhirui not because he hoped that the family could provide spiritual medicine, but just wanted to make a clear way so that he could sell the spiritual pill in the future and earn spiritual stones. But now, things seemed to be heading in another direction. But Li Zhirui couldn't explain this matter, so he had to follow Li Zhirui and walk to the main hall with a complicated look. Clan leader, Zhirui is a genius in alchemy. 10 spiritual medicines can make him refine the jade spirit pill. As soon as Li Zhirui entered the door, he shouted loudly, as if he was afraid that others couldn't hear him. Li Zhiqing originally wanted to scold Li Zhirui for not being steady enough, but after hearing what he said, he immediately changed the subject and asked, "Are you telling the truth? This is the jade spirit pill refined by Eru." Li Zhirui held a jade bottle in his palm. Li Zhiqing used his spiritual sense to explore the jade bottle and found that there were indeed 2 jade spirit pills in it. His face suddenly relaxed. Okay, since Zhirui has a talent in this area, the family will definitely do their best to cultivate him. Zhirui, Li Zhiqing's face showed a trace of love and excitement, and said, "If you are short of materials, go to the warehouse to get them. If the warehouse doesn't have them, the family will send someone to the market to buy them. You don't have to worry about these things. Practice well and try to increase your success rate." But Li Zhiqing's expression suddenly became serious. "You can't take up your practice time to refine the pill." "I won't delay my practice," Li Zhirui solemnly promised. Li Zhiqing nodded with satisfaction and said, "Okay, take this warrant and go to the warehouse to get the elixir." Li Zhirui took the warrant and left. On the way, he sighed silently, but then he thought that since he already had the title of genius, it would not hurt to have another title of alchemy genius. He could also use this opportunity to make a contribution to the family. "Tell me about Zhirui's alchemy." It was not that Li Zhiqing doubted Li Zhirui, he just wanted to understand the matter clearly. Li Zhirui started from the time when the two of them went to the market together and Li Zhirui bought 2 water alchemy recipes. He told Li Zhirui everything in detail. Water alchemy? No wonder I saw that the quality of the 2 jade spirit pills was a bit poor, but the pill poison was not much. As he said that, Li Zhirui couldn't help but sigh. The family did have some alchemy inheritance, but they were all fire alchemy methods, which might not be helpful to Li Zhirui. Tomorrow you go to Yunqingfang Market and find out about the business of the grocery store. Li Zhirui didn't react for a moment, and asked in confusion, what are you going to do? The family now has you carving arrays, Zhirui refining elixirs, and some simple instruments and talismans. The spiritual rice will be mature soon. With so many kinds of spiritual objects, it is enough to open a grocery store. There is another reason. The family is now training spiritual chefs. Before they succeed, the family needs another way to earn spiritual stones, and the grocery store is a good choice. But is there any news from the Baiyu sect? Li Zhirui asked with some concern. Once the Baiyu sect is unwilling to let go of the beast-taming sect and its vassal forces, opening a grocery store is likely to bring danger to the family. I just received news from my 5th brother. He said that the Baiyu sect has not issued a hunting order. I think it will not take action against us small forces that have escaped. Li Zhirui also wanted to open a grocery store after learning this news. That's good. Since there is no danger, Li Zhirui naturally accepted the order with pleasure. The news that Li Zhirui went to the storehouse to collect spiritual medicines for alchemy soon spread among the clan members. Everyone was envious and excited. Because the family had one more alchemist, it meant that the family could earn more spiritual stones, and they, the clan members, could also share some benefits. The 2 original alchemists in the family couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. With Li Zhirui, the pressure on them could be reduced a little. You know, before this, the whole family of more than 70 cultivators consumed a large amount of spiritual pills every month, and also needed to sell some of them, but there were only 2 of them to refine them. It was impossible to say that there was no pressure. However, Li Zhirui didn't know these things now. Now he spent his time refining pills and practicing every day, and he never went out. Until 5 days later, Li Zhirui brought dozens of jade spiritual pills to the storehouse and handed them to the internal affairs elder Li Zhirui, and prepared to receive another 30 spiritual medicines from him. Zhirui, what is your success rate now? Li Zhirui asked. It is now stable at 40%, but in fact, Li Zhirui's success rate has reached 60%. Good, 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 Li Zhirui applauded. Li Zhirui's current success rate can already recover the cost, and he will earn spiritual stones in the future. Zhirui, before, the family was training you to make alchemy, and there was no regulation on how many spiritual pills you had to hand in, but now that you have settled down, you still have to follow the rules. Seeing Li Zhirui's face of approval, Li Zhirui liked him more and more, and said with a smile, just follow the family's rules. 1 spiritual medicine hand and 5 spiritual pills, and you can keep the extra ones for yourself. Whether you sell or take them, the family will not care. Okay, Li Zhirui agreed without hesitation, and even if he was not worried about offending people, he would be willing to hand in more spiritual pills. In addition to this benefit, the family's alchemists can also get an extra contribution value. In the Li family, contribution values are more precious than spiritual stones, because contribution values can be used to exchange for various methods accumulated by the family over hundreds of years, which is something that spiritual stones cannot do. The family now has only 40 spiritual medicines left for the jade spirit pill. You just need to hand over 200 spiritual pills in half a month, Li Zhirui said with a smile. Li Zhirui took the storage bag, bowed to Li Zhirui, and turned to leave. Soon, Li Zhirui's success rate of pills was heard by Li Zhirui. It seems that Zhirui's talent for alchemy is indeed good. Li Zhirui, who was discussing the opening of a grocery store with him, couldn't help but show a bright smile on his face. In this case, are you still worried that the business of the store will not be good? Li Zhirui smiled. However, after Li Zhirui observed the market for a few days, he found that there were many similar shops and the competition was fierce. He was worried that the family could not earn spiritual stones. Don't worry, Li Zhirui said with a smile. After all, the advantage of water-refined spiritual pills is too great. If the price is the same, other shops will definitely not be able to compete with us. Please read it. Reading it is related to the recommendation of the new book period, which is very important. Please, everyone. Chapter 11, Magical Instruments. If I continue to practice at this speed, I will be able to break through the 8th level of key training in a year at most. After refining a jade spirit pill, Li Zhirui felt the growth of his mana, his eyes full of joy. The higher the realm, the longer the time of practice. If it is normal practice, with Li Zhirui's qualifications, it will take almost 2 years to break through, but now with the assistance of the jade spirit pill, the breakthrough time is directly shortened by half. No wonder the disciples of those big forces practice so fast, and there are many 20-year-old foundation-building cultivators, with enough practice resources and excellent qualifications. How can the practice speed not be fast? After finishing the practice, Li Zhirui went to the warehouse with a jade bottle, because today was the day for him to deliver the elixir. It has been more than 3 months since Li Zhirui handed in the jade spirit pill for the first time. During this period, he would receive 100 materials every month, and then hand in 500 pills each time. After so many times of practice, Li Zhirui's success rate has stabilized at 80%, but it has stopped there, as if the practice has encountered a bottleneck. Before breaking it, no matter how hard you try, it is just in vain. So Li Zhirui had the idea of refining the Bailang pill again. After dozens of practices, he successfully refined the Bailang pill, but the success rate was less than 40%. He could only practice more and improve it slowly. However, the spiritual medicine planted in Li Zhirui's space had been used up, so this time when he came to the warehouse, in addition to the materials for the jade spirit pill, he also wanted to collect 50 spiritual medicines for refining the Bailang pill. Li Zhirui readily agreed to Li Zhirui's needs, with only one request, that is, if the number of Bailang pills was insufficient, he would use jade spirit pills to make up for it. Li Zhirui would naturally not refuse, because during this period of time, he already had more than 1,000 jade spirit pills in his hands, enough for him to squander. By the way, Grandpa Li, I want to sell some jade spirit pills to the family. Li Zhirui suddenly remembered that he had something else to do, and hurriedly called Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui seemed to have expected this, and said, the family's purchase price is 2.5 spirit stones per pill. If you entrust the family to sell it, you have to pay a commission of 2 spirit stones for each bottle of jade spirit pill. Sell it directly to the family, Li Zhirui said without hesitation. Li Zhirui certainly knew that the second option was more beneficial to him, but now that he had the opportunity and the ability to repay the family's upbringing, he would naturally not hesitate. After all, he now has to rely on the Li family to grow better. The better the Li family is, the better the environment for his growth will naturally be. How much are you going to sell? Li Zhirui asked with a smile. 1,000 jade spirit pills. Li Zhirui still had more than 200 spirit pills left in his hand, but this was enough for him and King to take for a long time. Besides, he was still helping the family to refine pills, and he could earn 300 jade spirit pills every month, so he didn't have to worry about not having enough spirit pills. A trace of surprise flashed in Li Zhirui's eyes, but he did not ask Li Zhirui about the success rate of the pill. He only said, the family does not have so many spirit stones now. I can give you at most 1,000 spirit stones, and I will give you the rest in a while. How about it? Li Zhirui nodded indifferently. Anyway, he stayed on the island all day now, and he didn't have to worry about cultivation resources. He couldn't spend the spirit stones. He sold the pills just because he had too many accumulated in his hands and needed to deal with them. You kid, Li Zhirui saw that Li Zhirui looked indifferent, and said angrily and amusedly, aren't you afraid that the family will swallow your spirit stones? Li Zhirui grinned and said, I believe in the family and Grandpa Li. If this situation really happened, then the Li family would not have been able to last for more than 300 years, and even the more serious intrigues and power struggles would not have occurred. Li Zhirui was helpless. After thinking for a while, he said, wait a minute. After that, he turned and entered the real warehouse behind him. Soon, Li Zhirui came out with a storage bag and said, now that you have broken through to the late stage of key training, it's time to change the magic weapon in your hand. I have specially selected a few magic weapons that are suitable for you. Take a look for yourself. Looking at the magic weapons in front of him, Li Zhirui's eyes suddenly lit up. He was busy with a family relocation and alchemy before, and forgot that he should change his magic weapon. So the magic weapon in his hand now is the first level medium grade magic weapon King Mu sword purchased from the family after breaking through the middle stage of key training. There are a total of 5 first level high grade magic weapons in front of Li Zhirui, namely King Fang sword, Mu Song needle, water mist bead, Bishu sword, and King Gai hairpin. Among them, the water mist bead is a defensive magic weapon. After activation, a layer of water mist will linger around the body, which has an outstanding defensive effect against fire spells. Kingayu Harpin is a rare special magic weapon. Long-term wearing can nourish the soul and has a certain defensive ability against soul attacks. Grandpa Li, I want the water mist bead and the clear jade hairpin, and Li Zhirui was determined to buy these two magic weapons, but he was a little undecided about the three attack magic weapons. Wooden pine needles. Li Zhirui didn't hesitate for long before giving his answer. Although the Kingmu sword was a bit low in rank, it was still usable, and it could be used to confuse the enemy, and then use the wooden pine needles to launch a sneak attack. The clear jade hairpin is 1,500 spiritual stones, the water mist bead is 1,000 spiritual stones, and the wooden pine needles are 1,200 spiritual stones. Li Zhirui smiled and quoted the prices of the three magic weapons. Generally speaking, at the same rank, the price of an attack magic weapon is lower than that of a defense magic weapon, but the wooden pine needles are different. It is a set of attack magic weapons with a total of 36 pine needles, so the price will be higher. Li Zhirui's face froze. He knew that the price of a first-grade upper-grade magic weapon was not cheap, but he didn't expect that the three magic weapons he picked would cost almost 4,000 spiritual stones in total. You know, the price of a second-grade lower-grade magic weapon is also around 4,000 spiritual stones. Then I'll buy the jade hairpin and the water mist beads first. The wood pine needles. I can only buy them when I have spiritual stones. Grandpa Li, you have to keep them for me. Li Zhirui hesitated for a moment and made a choice. Li Zhirui laughed and said, don't worry. Among the Kigan cultivators in the family, you are the richest. Other members of the family don't have so many spiritual stones. In fact, Li Zhirui didn't expect that Li Zhirui would be so extravagant. He took out these 5 magic tools. He originally thought that Li Zhirui needed them now, and the family owed him spiritual stones, which happened to be offset by magic tools. But who would have thought that Li Zhirui would take a fancy to 3 of them at once? But it's good this way. These magic tools have been in the warehouse for many years. Now someone has bought them, and they don't have to be kept in the warehouse to gather dust anymore. Thank you, Grandpa Li. Li Zhirui handed over the spiritual stones that had not yet been warmed up, then put away the 2 magic tools, turned around and left the warehouse. Li Zhirui thought that no one should come to the warehouse at this time, so he closed the door and walked towards the main hall. Second brother, Zhirui handed over 1,500 jade spirit pills today. Li Zhirui showed a hint of surprise in his eyes, and calculated in his mind, saying, his success rate is at least 80%, right, it must be. Li Zhirui did not say more on this topic, and asked instead, isn't the family planning to open a grocery store in Yunqingfang City? How is the preparation going now? Chapter 12 Opening. The shop has been rented. Now Shi Ren and a few juniors are cleaning it. It will be open in a few days. Li Zhirui nodded. Since the grocery store was handed over to Li Zhirui, there was nothing to worry about. Although he was not very meticulous, he was not so bad that he could not do such a small thing. Then Li Zhirui asked another question, how are the spiritual chefs trained by the family now? Li Shijin and Li Zhizhong should be talented and can already make spiritual food. As for the other members of the family, they can only help out when the time comes, Li Zhirui said with a smile. The family first conducted a selection and then selected 5 members of the family for further training, but in this process, the gap between them was soon seen. In order not to waste spiritual objects, Li Zhirui could only concentrate resources to train Li Shijin and Li Zhizhong. However, making spiritual food is a more troublesome thing, so the other 3 were not abandoned, but asked to help clean the spiritual objects and do some basic and simple things. Maybe under the influence of what they saw and heard, the 3 of them learned to make spiritual food? Li Zhirui was very satisfied to have 2 clan members with spiritual chef talents. But the family doesn't have many spiritual stones now. It's impossible to rent a shop in the market in a short time. Moreover, the spiritual stones needed to open a restaurant are much more than those of a grocery store. As the internal affairs elder, Li Zhirui was very clear about the family's finances. From the fact that the family couldn't even take out Li Zhirui's 2,500 spiritual stones, it can be seen how much the Li family lacks spiritual stones now, let alone renting a restaurant. There's no rush for this. Li Zhirui was of course aware of the family's current situation, so he didn't think about getting it done in a short time. According to Li Zhirui's idea, It would be very good to be able to start planning a restaurant in half a year. Li Zhirui nodded, and then left in a hurry. He came this time to hand over the jade spirit pill to Li Zhirui, and by the way, emphasized the current situation that the family no longer had spiritual stones. Time quickly came a few days later. Early in the morning, the big Banyan Island became particularly lively. Because today was the day when the family's store in Yunqing Market opened, many clan members wanted to take this opportunity to go shopping in the market. Because during this period, the tribesmen who had been to the market had been showing off how good and lively the Yunqing Market was, which made others yearn for it. It was no wonder that the tribesmen were ignorant. After all, when they were in Bailang County, because of the tyranny of the Beastmaster sect, except for the places directly under the control of the Beastmaster sect, the territories of the vassal forces were like remote and backward mountainous areas. Facing the expectations of the tribesmen, Li Zhirui waved his hand and asked Li Zhirui and Li Zhilian, two foundation-building monks, to lead the team. As long as the tribesmen wanted to go to the market, they could go. Li Zhirui wanted to go to the market to buy some things, so he followed him on the spirit ship. A quarter of an hour later, the spirit ship landed outside the market, and dozens of tribesmen followed Li Zhirui and Li Zhilian out in a line. Wow! Li Zhirui's brothers and sisters looked at the prosperous and lively market, and many of them couldn't help but exclaimed in a low voice. The monks are all sharp-eyed and sharp-eared people, not to mention that there are so many of them. The noise they make is not small, which attracts the surrounding monks to look over, some with disdain, some with curiosity. Their eyes are obscure, but their emotions are very direct. This makes them feel ashamed. Even Li Zhirui feels extremely embarrassed, silently moves to the side, hiding himself behind the tall Li Zhirui. Let's go. As soon as Li Zhilian spoke, everyone's eyes were instantly withdrawn, which was a reverence for strength and respect for the foundation-building monks. After the Li family entered the market, the nearby monks began to discuss and speculate about their identities and origins. Looking at the direction they came from, they should be from overseas, but those overseas families should not be so unworldly, right? A monk guessed, it may be the mysterious Li family on the Banyan Island. The Li family on the Banyan Island. After mentioning this, many monks remembered it. The reason why the Li family is mysterious is that the Li family rarely appeared in front of the world before, so many cultivators don't know how many members of the Li family are and how strong they are. They only know that this family is not bad and has a foundation-building cultivator, but they don't know more. Is the Li family preparing to enter the world? That's why they sent so many members out, but they may not think that the Li family kept it secret before because they didn't want to expose their weakness. Now that they have enough strength, they naturally don't need to be mysterious and make a fuss. However, Li Zhirui and others, led by Li Zhilian, came to a store with a good location. Li's grocery store. Li Zhirui read the name of the store. It was very ordinary, but it represented that the Li family had taken root again in this area, which meant that the family was no longer rootless and could rely on this place to nourish and strengthen the Li family, a small family with dozens of members. Li Zhilian opened the store with a key and let everyone in. The store was not big, only more than 30 square meters, but the advantage was that there was a backyard where people could rest without running back and forth. Li Zhirui was the first to enter the backyard. Looking at the three small rooms not far away, he wondered who the other two people would be besides Li Zhilian. Soon, Li Zhilian announced that the two were from the Shi generation. The family had considered the reason for choosing them. First, they were old. Because of their qualifications, their cultivation was almost the same. Unlike the Zhi generation, they were still young and could still make some progress in their cultivation. Secondly, these two were smart, clever, and experienced people. Unlike the Zhi generation, they were too young and might be a little impulsive. Therefore, they were very suitable candidates to be the actual shopkeepers of the grocery store. The reason for choosing two people was that the family was planning for the restaurant in the future. After all, it was impossible to wait until the restaurant was open before training the shopkeeper, right? Especially since the monks who came and went in the restaurant were mixed, they needed people with relevant experience to manage them. Now was the right time to train them. Since you are here, then help us. Li Zhilian looked at Li Zhirui and others and said, while you are strolling in the market, please promote the family's grocery store. Uncle Ren, there is no need to promote it. Li Zhirui suddenly spoke, pointing outside the door and said, with so many of us coming to the market, we have attracted the attention of many cultivators. They must know that this is a grocery store. It's not that Li Zhirui is unwilling, but there is really no need for them to do so. Moreover, many clan members are coming to the market for the first time. If they really do what Li Zhirui said, they will offend people by accident, which will be a disaster. Li Zhirui raised his eyebrows, turned around and looked outside the door. There were indeed many cultivators standing outside. In this case, there is no need for you to promote it. Just stroll around the market, but you must return here before the hour of the twilight, otherwise you will be punished according to the clan rules. Li Zhirui waved his hand and let everyone move freely. Okay, everyone left the store happily, leaving only the two people who were watching the store, and Li Zhirui and Li Zhilian, two foundation builders. Although no cultivator dared to take action in Yunqingfang City, it does not mean that nothing will happen. There may be some ruffians, or cultivators who deliberately make things difficult for others and try to cause trouble. The reason why the two foundation builders did not leave was to deter these cultivators with ulterior motives. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 13 received a message from the station. I just opened the assistant and saw the contract signing message, then I clicked on it excitedly, ready to go through the contract signing process, but I misread it and chose the wrong option. I am so stupid. Why am I so stupid? Chapter 14, have you noticed that this book has a cover? Having a cover means that the book has been signed successfully. Dear friends, those who have money can support the market with money, referring to investment, and those who don't have money can support the market with people, referring to reading and voting. Zioji would like to thank you. Update soon. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Hot. Not long after, several monks walked into the shop together and looked around at the various spiritual objects on the counter. Various first-grade, low-grade and medium-grade magic tools, talismans, and formations took up more than half of the counter, and the rest was filled with spiritual pills. In addition to the jade spirit pill handed in by Li Zhirui, there were also common spiritual pills such as soul replenishing pill, blood replenishing pill, and hemostatic powder. Among these dazzling array of spiritual objects, the jade spirit pill was the most conspicuous, because on the wooden sign with the price, there was a special sentence added, "This is a water-refined spiritual pill." Is this really a water-refined pill? A monk asked with shining eyes. Obviously he knew the goods. The companion beside him didn't understand, and asked curiously, "What is water-refined elixir?" It is a spiritual elixir made by using spiritual water as firewood. Because this method is more difficult than fire refining, and consumes more financial resources, few cultivators will learn water refining, the man said, but the advantages of water-refined elixir are also obvious. Not only is the elixir less poisonous, but the quality is also better than fire-refining elixir. Generally speaking, the price of water-refined elixir is a little higher than that of fire-refining elixir, so when he saw the water-refined elixir with the same price as the fire-refined elixir, he wondered if this was a gimmick made by the store. My Li family will not do such a thing to damage our own reputation, Li Zhirui explained with a smile, and at the same time took out a bottle of Yulingdan, opened the cork, and said, "If you are worried, you can check it yourself. The difference between water-refined elixir and fire-refined elixir is very obvious. One is moist and shiny, and the other is dry and shining. It can be distinguished by the naked eye." Is it really water-refined pills? The cultivator probed into the room with his spiritual sense and shouted in surprise, "I want 5 bottles of jade spirit pills. 1 bottle of jade spirit pills cost 28 spirit stones, and 5 bottles cost 140 spirit stones." He took them out without hesitation. Thanks to this man's publicity, many cultivators came up. From their expressions, it was clear that they were tempted. Not a single cultivator suspected that he was a hired agent of the Li family. "I'm going to get the spirit stones now. Please save 10 bottles for me." "No. 20 bottles." After saying that, he ran out in a hurry without waiting for Li Zhirui's consent. This time, the Li family members understood why no one suspected him. He should be from a certain force and would not do such a thing to cheat others. Seeing that the man opened his mouth and ordered 20 bottles of jade spirit pills, the cultivators watching in the store could not hold back and asked to buy 1 bottle each. Although they were not as generous as that man, They sold more than a dozen bottles of jade spirit pills soon because of the large number. As these monks left, the news that Li's grocery store had water-refined pills for sale also spread in the market. Many monks were knowledgeable and came to buy them. When the man came back, more than 50 bottles of jade spirit pills had been sold. You know, it was only half an hour later, which shows how popular the water-refined pills were. Such a hot situation made the Li family members start to worry whether the more than 200 bottles of jade spirit pills accumulated by the family would not be enough to sell. But there was no way to do it. These were all the jade spirit pills the family had. In order to earn more spirit stones, the family did not even distribute jade spirit pills to the clan members. Li Zhirui, who was strolling in the market at this time, had no idea that the jade spirit pills he refined were so popular, because he was bargaining with a small vendor for a spirit stone. Although Li Zhirui had refined so many jade spirit pills, he not only did not have many spirit stones on him, but also had a debt of 1,200 spirit stones. Li Zhirui only had more than 100 spiritual stones on him now, so he didn't go to the relevant stores to buy spiritual medicine seeds and young plants, but chose them on the street stalls, hoping to save a few spiritual stones. I bought dozens of spiritual medicine seeds, and I asked you to spend a spiritual stone. Are you reluctant to do so? Li Zhirui said angrily. Do you know that one spiritual stone can buy 1/3 of a jade spiritual pill? The stall owner said without giving in, and the price I offer is already very affordable. If you go to the store to buy it, you can't get it without 60 or 70 spiritual stones. Li Zhirui was speechless for a moment, because what the other party said made sense, and his store had the most complete spiritual medicine seeds in the entire street, and the quality was also good, so Li Zhirui didn't need to buy them everywhere. Okay, but Li Zhirui was still a little unwilling after thinking about it, so he pointed to the thumb-sized seed beside him, which was pitch black and could not be seen as what kind of spiritual medicine it was, and said, but you have to give up that seed. Forget it, you are awesome, I'll give you a bargain. The stall owner waved his hand and put on a helpless expression. Li Zhirui pouted. He had not had much contact with vendors in the cultivation world, but in his previous life, he had heard a lot about small vendors who were millionaires and owned 2 luxury houses. He didn't believe that he had taken such a big advantage. After the payment and goods were settled, Li Zhirui turned around and left this stall, but he didn't expect to bump into Li Zizhen, Li Zhihao and other people of the same generation. Brother, second sister, since he met them, Li Zhirui couldn't pretend to be ignorant and leave, so he had to walk up to them and say hello. Ninth brother, everyone greeted Li Zhirui in unison, and said to Li Zhihao, who was most familiar to him, you are here too. Well, I came to buy some spiritual medicine seeds. The things here are cheaper than those in the shops, but, Li Zhirui kept his voice down and said, there are also many fakes, so when buying things, it is best to look more and not be greedy for small bargains. As for whether he would be targeted, Li Zhirui was not worried. These brothers and sisters did not have many spiritual stones in their hands, and they could not buy many things. In addition, there were 2 foundation building elders in the market. How do you know so much? Have you been here? Li Zhihao looked at Li Zhirui with curiosity. Li Zhirui nodded and said, I came here once with Uncle Ren before. Everyone stopped asking more questions. They gathered together on the street and blocked the way. After a few words of greeting, they dispersed. Li Zhirui followed Li Zhihao silently. The street stalls were not big, and they were soon finished. Except for Li Zhirui, other tribesmen bought some spiritual objects more or less. The most eye-catching person is Li Zizhen, the cheap elder brother. Looking at his smiling face, you can tell that he got something good this time. However, Li Zhirui did not ask much. After all, the two were not familiar with each other, and as a cultivator, it was normal to have his own secrets. Brother, if everything is fine, let's go back to the store first, Li Zhirui said. Well, let's go. Li Zizhen still had some stability as an elder brother. He quickly restrained his smile and walked towards the grocery store with his brothers and sisters. However, the closer they got to the store, the more cultivators they met, and many of them were discussing water-refined pills. It seems that the business in the store is very good. Li Zhirui thought to himself. The other clansmen kept their eyes on Li Zhirui. Outsiders did not know the origin of the water-refined pill, but they knew that the water-refined pill came from the hands of the genius in front of them, who was famous in the family. Not only is he well qualified, But he also has such a high talent for alchemy that even close clansmen can't help but feel a little envious. If possible, friends, please invest in this article. Thank you. Chapter 16 Conditions. When everyone arrived at the door of the grocery store, they saw many cultivators inside buying spiritual objects, most of which were buying jade spirit pills. There were too many customers in the store, so they couldn't go in, so they had to stand outside. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait long, and other tribesmen came back one after another. Li Zhirui saw this, said something to Li Zhirui, and led the tribesmen to the outside of the market. With Li Zhirui, a foundation-building cultivator, leading the team, the road was naturally calm and they returned to the Banyan Island safely. Let's go back. After Li Zhirui finished speaking, he took the lead and strode away. He was anxious to report to Li Zhirui about the business of the grocery store and find a way to solve the problem of the shortage of water-refined pills. After Li Zhirui said goodbye to the tribesmen, he walked towards the Shanine courtyard alone, and couldn't wait to enter the space as soon as he entered the door. Some time ago, a batch of spiritual medicines matured in the space, and Li Zhirui also collected their seeds, but because he didn't need them now, he didn't plant them. It just so happened that Li Zhirui bought a lot of spiritual medicines that he didn't have before, especially the seeds of several spiritual medicines needed to refine the jade spirit pill and the replenishing spirit pill. He bought the most. However, as soon as Li Zhirui entered, Daking came up and opened his huge mouth, waiting to be fed. When he was in financial difficulties before, Li Zhirui had never treated Daking badly, not to mention that he didn't lack spiritual pills at all now. So Li Zhirui fed 2 jade spirit pills without hesitation, and Daking couldn't refine more. Go to the lake to refine the spiritual pills. Li Zhirui patted Daking's green head and pointed to the huge rock specially for Daking to rest. This was specially found by Li Zhirui and placed in the space, so that Daking could have a resting place close to the water but not submerged by the water. Although Daking's intelligence was not high, it could still understand some simple content, and slowly crawled away with its head shaking. After settling Daking, Li Zhirui began to cast a spell to loosen the soil, summon a spiritual rain, and finally planted the spiritual seeds one by one. Li Zhirui worked for more than an hour. When he looked up, he saw the heavy ears of grain not far away and murmured, "It will be ripe in a few days." Thinking of this, Li Zhirui suddenly had a headache. He planted spiritual rice before because he could eat it directly to speed up his cultivation. After the 10 mu of spiritual rice matured, it was almost more than 2,000 kilograms. But with the help of Yuling pills, Li Zhirui no longer needed to eat several kilograms of spiritual rice every day like before. If it was just like this, it would be fine. If he couldn't eat it in a short time, he could save it and eat it slowly. But the problem is that these 10 mu of spiritual rice are just the beginning. There are still dozens of mu of spiritual rice, which will mature in the next few months. I can only find a chance to go to the market and find a way to sell the spiritual rice. Sell it to the family? It's impossible to explain the source of the spiritual rice. Eat it yourself? How long will it take to eat thousands of kilograms of spiritual rice? Li Zhirui made up his mind and didn't bother about it anymore. In the next few days, he was either refining pills or practicing. He didn't know that because of him, the family's top brass had a small dispute. The cause of the incident was also very simple. Li Zhirui felt that the water-refined pills were so popular that 500 jade spirit pills a month might not be enough to sell. He hoped that Li Zhirui could refine more spirit pills every month. In this way, the family can earn more spirit stones, and Li Zhirui can also make a fortune from it, and by the way, he can also improve his alchemy level. And no one needs to make any sacrifices. After all, refining a furnace of spirit pills is at most half an hour. Even if Li Zhirui takes out 4 hours a day to refine pills, it will not delay his practice. In this way, the family can get more than 1,000 jade spirit pills every month and earn more spirit stones. But Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui disagreed because they felt that this was oppressing Li Zhirui. The most important thing is that Li Zhirui, as the most likely member of the family to break through the golden pill in the past 100 years, should focus on practice. Seeing that the elders of both sides had been arguing for several days because of this matter, Li Zhirui, as a junior, had to stand up and said, "Qingbo, you can't argue about this matter. Why don't you call Zhirui and let him choose for himself? Is that okay?" "Okay," Li Zhirui agreed without hesitation. Although he had been on the Banyan Island and had no contact with Li Zhirui, it did not mean that he didn't know Li Zhirui. In Li Zhirui's view, Li Zhirui attached great importance to the interests of the family. He would never refuse this matter if it did not hinder himself. So, Li Zhirui, who was about to sharpen his knife to Lingmi, was suddenly summoned to the main hall, and then Li Zhirui explained the reason to him. Okay, after listening, Li Zhirui didn't even think about it and agreed directly. Seeing that Li Zhirui was so straightforward, Li Zhilian looked at Li Zhirui with full love and appreciation. But I have a condition. I hope the family can collect more water alchemy recipes and provide spiritual medicine for me to practice. After a pause, Li Zhirui added, there is no need to provide too many spiritual medicines. 50 copies are enough. If there are more than 50 copies, I will pay for the spiritual stones myself and entrust the family to buy them for me. Li Zhirui certainly knew that if he did this, he would spend more time on alchemy, but this would not hinder his practice. And it was just the right opportunity to make a condition to the family. With such a condition, Li Zhirui could openly use the spiritual medicines in the space to refine various spiritual pills in the future. Anyway, in the eyes of the clan members, he is now a genius in alchemy. Li Zhirui originally disagreed, but Li Zhirui himself agreed, so what else could he do? Have you thought it through? But Li Zhirui still asked, giving Li Zhirui a chance to regret. Li Zhirui felt warm in the heart and said with a smile, Grandpa clan leader, don't worry, I won't lose the big picture for the small. In that case, let's decide it. Li Zhirui finally nodded, but did not agree to do it immediately. Instead, he said, we don't know how many jade spirit pills can be sold in the market. We can't assume that it will always be like this just because it's popular for a while, so starting from next month, Li Zhirui will first give the family 1,000 jade spirit pills. If they can't be sold out, then reduce a part. Li Zhirui deliberately interrupted and said, what if they are sold out? You can only refine so many after they are sold out. Li Zhirui glared at Li Zhirui, your pill success rate is so high, the family will just buy it from you then, but if you can't sell it, you'll have to find a way to deal with the jade spirit pills in your hands. It is impossible for the family to buy jade spirit pills from Li Zhirui when the pills are not sold out. I know, Li Zhirui didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He could just sell it to other shops in the market, or to merchants stopping by Yunqing Market. There would be no shortage of buyers anyway. Of course, in order to take care of his own business, Li Zhirui would also sign a contract not to allow the other party to sell it in Yunqing Market. Chapter 17 follow. Chapter 17 follow, please read. Please invest. After a few days, Li Zhirui processed the first batch of mature spiritual rice in the space, and finally got more than 2,400 kilograms of spiritual rice. Looking at the full spiritual rice in the storage bag, Li Zhirui prepared to go to the market alone, but before that, he needed to reply to the family to go out. This is a rule made by the Li family to protect the clan members and prevent the death of the children who have not grown up. The family rules, clan members who are not yet adults or are not on the late stage of key training are not allowed to leave the clan. Because they are young and have low cultivation, it is difficult to get out safely once they encounter any danger. Even if these two conditions are met, they still need to reply to the family, report their whereabouts, and the family will look for them. Only foundation building cultivators can come and go freely. But generally speaking, if the clan members who meet the conditions apply, the family will not refuse, so Li Zhirui easily got a warrant to leave the island. Li Zhirui walked to the edge of the Banyan Island and threw a paper crane into the sky. As the spell was cast, the paper crane grew in the wind. Li Zhirui moved and jumped onto the paper crane. This was the cheapest flying magic weapon that Li Zhirui had bought before. It had a slow flying speed, no protective aura, and could only carry one person. In short, it had a lot of shortcomings. But the only two advantages were enough for Li Zhirui or most of the key training monks to choose it. One was the low price, and the other was that it did not require too much mana. You know, flying magic weapons are the most mana-consuming. Spirit boats are okay, they can be driven by spirit stones, but most of the other flying magic weapons require monks to drive with mana. The paper crane flew very slowly, and it took more than an hour to fly for more than 200 miles. Fortunately, the journey was calm, and he did not encounter any monks who robbed houses or monsters. After Li Zhirui landed safely, he did not rush into the market, but found a hidden place, changed his clothes, and wore a black gauze hat on his head. In fact, the mortal things on Li Zhirui's body could not stop the spying of the divine consciousness, but under normal circumstances, no cultivator would do such an offensive act. Li Zhirui's dress was not abrupt in the market, because many people were dressed similarly. After entering the market, Li Zhirui did not go to the street stalls, but randomly found a grocery store. "I wonder what you want to buy," a cultivator in the early stage of key training came up immediately. Li Zhirui deliberately lowered his voice and said, "I want to sell some spiritual rice. Can your store accept it?" He deliberately emphasized the word some. "Dao, please come in. The most important thing for a clerk is to be smart." Of course, this person heard the implication of Li Zhirui's words. After entering the small compartment, the man asked, "How much spiritual rice do you have?" "What kind of spiritual rice is it?" "First level medium quality green spiritual rice, a total of 500 kilograms. Li Zhirui has water and wood spiritual roots, so the spiritual rice he grows is naturally of these two attributes. In addition to the green spiritual rice that matured this time, he also has first level top quality cloud water spiritual rice and green stem spiritual rice in his space. The purchase price of green spiritual rice is 1 spiritual stone per kilogram." After hearing this price, Li Zhirui frowned slightly. The price of 1 kilogram of green spiritual rice on the market is 2 spiritual stones. Of course, he also knew that the purchase price would definitely be less, but he didn't expect it to be reduced by half. Seeing that Li Zhirui didn't speak, the man knew that he was not satisfied with the price, and explained with a smile, "Dao, our Linlang Pavilion's price is very fair. The price given by other stores will definitely not be higher than 1 spiritual stone. Forget it, then sell it to you." Li Zhirui didn't insist. As for whether what he said was true or false, we will know later. After getting 500 spiritual stones, Li Zhirui left Linlang Pavilion, wandered around the market, and entered another shop. This was a shop specializing in selling spiritual rice, but the price they offered was 9 spiritual stones for 10 caddies of spiritual rice. Li Zhirui's face sank. He was very dissatisfied with the original purchase price of 1 spiritual stone, but now it was even less. Without saying anything else, he got up and left. Then Li Zhirui went to several more shops. The price they offered was at most 1 spiritual stone. Li Zhirui sold 500 caddies to each of the 2 shops with the highest bids. But even so, Li Zhirui still had nearly 1,000 caddies of spiritual rice left. In desperation, Li Zhirui had to go to the street stalls, rent a temporary stall, and put out some of the green sprout spiritual rice. The price was 15 spiritual stones for 10 caddies of spiritual rice, which was 5 spiritual stones cheaper than in the shops. Because of the low price, it attracted many cultivators to come and buy, but after a few hours, only 500 to 600 caddies were sold. But that was it, and he couldn't sell much more. "Alice," Li Zhirui sighed silently, stood up and packed up his stall. The sun had already begun to set, and it was time for him to return to Banyan Island. Judging from today's sales, the subsequent waves of spiritual rice may not sell much, so what should be done with the remaining spiritual rice? Li Zhirui's mind has been lingering with this question, so much so that he didn't notice that there were 3 sneaky monks following him. When Li Zhirui came to the beach and prepared to sacrifice the paper crane, the 3 monks following him finally couldn't help but take action. The sudden sound of breaking through the air made Li Zhirui's heart alarmed, and he activated the water mist beads without hesitation. A thick water mist quickly spread and enveloped Li Zhirui. But in just one breath, 3 huge fireballs hit the water mist, exploding the water mist, but fortunately they did not break the water mist and hurt Li Zhirui. Although Li Zhirui had never encountered such a thing, it did not mean that he did not know how to fight back. "Decking, you will use the water arrow technique on the 3 people next. As a vassal family of the beast-taming sect, the Li family never fights alone when fighting with others." Decking nodded in confusion, and he opened his mouth wide. In an instant, a water arrow formed in his mouth and shot out. Li Zhirui saw Decking's cooperation, and his panicked heart could not help but be certain. He quickly injected a magic power into the water mist beads to enhance his own defense. Then he took out a pill of replenishing spirit from the storage bag, held it in his mouth, and slowly replenished his own mana to avoid insufficient mana. Li Zhirui threw a handful of seeds at the 3 people, and as his 10 fingers flew, green spiritual light flew out from his palm, and then thick vines rose into the sky, attacking the 3 people with their teeth and claws. These vines were specially cultivated by Li Zhirui. Some were covered with barbs, some were attached with toxins, and some were extremely tough. In short, although they were not spiritual objects, they were not so easy to deal with. Faced with the impenetrable attack of the vines, the 3 of them were in a panic for a while, and were whipped by the vines from time to time. As time went on, the toxins carried by the poisonous vines had penetrated into every corner of their bodies because of their violent movements. It's not that they didn't realize they were poisoned, but Li Zhirui didn't give them a chance to detoxify. After all, the Kingmu sword floating on the side was not just used to shock them. Asking for a wave of investment. Thank you W Zidong, Leng Gaifeng, and Wang Jie of Daganze for the rewards. Thank you Dai Wang Chao, Leng Gaifeng, and Cheyenne Lulu for the monthly tickets. Thank you friends for your recommendations and comments. By the way, I'm asking for another wave of investment. If there are 100 investors, one more chapter will be added. For every 100 more investors, one more chapter will be added. Chapter 18 Harvest. After dealing with the three thieves without any danger, Li Zhirui had no time to clean up the battlefield. He hurriedly took away their storage bags and the magic tools thrown aside, and then sacrificed the paper crane and escaped into the vast sea. At first, Li Zhirui's heart was beating like thunder, and his whole body was tense. After all, this was the first time he killed someone in his past and present life. How could he not be nervous? But as the sea breeze blew, it seemed to take away the uneasy mood in Li Zhirui's heart, allowing him to slowly calm down, and his mood also changed a little. When he returned to Banyan Island, Li Zhirui had completely gotten rid of the influence of those negative emotions. He returned the warrant with a normal look and then returned to his own courtyard. After closing the door, the first thing Li Zhirui did was to open the 3 storage bags. What are these things? Looking at the colorful clothes all over the ground, Li Zhirui's mouth twitched and his face was full of disgust. The 3 people who looked like paupers had their storage bags full of things, but most of them were women's underwear, and they also exuded a fishy smell. Li Zhirui's stomach was churning and he almost vomited. Li Zhirui quickly put these things into a storage bag and decided not to use this storage bag again in the future. After putting away those disgusting things, Li Zhirui was in the mood to check the wealth of the 3 cultivators. There were not many useful things, only 400 or 500 spirit stones in total, 3 first-level medium-quality magic tools, dozens of jade bottles containing unknown elixirs, and 9 jade slips. Li Zhirui first checked the jade slips, and first saw Biboju, Sharp Goldju, and How-To-Ju, 3 widely circulated basic exercises, as well as the 3 of them. The perception and understanding of the exercises they practiced. Then there was 5 Elements Magic Small Collection, a classic book that records the first level 5 Elements Magic. The value of these jade slips was not high. The family's Sutra library had them all. At most, they saved Li Zhirui some spirit stones for learning spells in the Sutra library. As for the 3 insights, Li Zhirui also read them. After reading them, he felt that they were mediocre and without any highlights. This was also the most common drawback of casual cultivators. The most important thing was that this was completely different from the cultivation method he practiced, and there was nothing worth referring to. The remaining 2 jade slips gave Li Zhirui a surprise, because they recorded a broken but very useful spell. Cicada breathing technique, as the name suggests, after casting the spell, it can make the cultivator restrain his own breath, just like the cicada insect underground, which is difficult to be detected. Moreover, the cicada breathing technique recorded in the jade slip also includes the cultivation method of the foundation building period, and even the golden elixir period is mentioned. It can be seen that this method has an extraordinary origin, but the content behind it was abruptly erased. As for the last jade slip, Li Zhirui only took a glance at it and immediately withdrew his consciousness. It was nothing else, this was an evil practice of collecting yin to replenish yang, or a magic practice. In fact, there are similar practices in the righteous way. But they are all orthodox dual cultivation of yin and yang harmony and yin and yang harmony. The method of collecting yin to replenish yang was developed by the magic cultivators, and they also spread similar practices everywhere with ulterior motives. In addition to the collection and replenishment practice that Li Zhirui encountered today, there are also ghost refining and corpse refining, which have become evil because of the transformation of the magic cultivators. And because these methods are transformed on the basis of the righteous practice, they are very concealed, unlike the magic cultivators who are full of evil spirits, and their identities can be seen at a glance. But the disadvantages are also great. As the time of cultivation increases and the realm increases, the emotions of the evil cultivators become more unstable, and even the heart of Tao will be polluted, becoming a human skin demon who only knows how to kill and satisfy his own evil desires. No wonder they have so many women's underwear in their hands, and they are obviously in the late stage of key training, but their strength is so poor. It turns out that they practice this evil method. When Li Zhirui fought with them, he realized that their magic was not as powerful as he imagined. Now he finally knew the reason. The second biggest drawback of evil cultivation is that the magic power is empty, resulting in insufficient magic power. But with such obvious hidden dangers, why are there so many cultivators flocking to practice evil methods? Because the evil cultivation method has an advantage that neither the righteous nor the evil has, that is, the cultivation speed is extremely fast. And this kind of cultivation speed does not value qualifications. If you practice the method of collecting and replenishing, then the more you collect and replenish, the faster you will practice. Therefore, evil cultivation will continue despite repeated bans. No matter how the righteous forces suppress evil cultivation, they can always revive. Li Zhirui looked at the jade slip in his hand, and a stream of magic power surged from his palm, destroying the jade slip directly, so as not to accidentally spread it out and harm others. Especially now, Li Zhirui spends most of his time on the Banyan Island. If he harms a certain tribesman, how can Li Zhirui face other tribesmen? However, the problem of being attacked today sounded a wake-up call for Li Zhirui. He was too ostentatious in selling spiritual rice on the street stalls today, so he was targeted. If he doesn't find a way to change it, he will definitely encounter similar things next time. But the problem is that the purchase price of those shops in the market is too low. Li Zhirui is not rich enough to ignore those spiritual stones. Forget it, let's take it one step at a time. After thinking hard, Li Zhirui couldn't come up with any good ideas. He could only put this matter aside for the time being and consider this issue when the next batch of spiritual rice is mature. Time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye, it was more than a month later. On this day, Li Zhirui sat cross-legged on the futon. As the exercises were running, the jade spirit pill was refined by him and turned into a little bit of mana into the danshan. Because of the large amount of jade spirit pills to assist in cultivation, although Li Zhirui had just broken through the 7th level of key training, the mana in his danshan had increased a lot. According to the current cultivation speed, he would be able to try to break through the 8th level of key training in less than a year. As the efficacy of the jade spirit pills was completely absorbed, Li Zhirui slowly opened his eyes and said with regret, "It's a pity that I can only refine 3 jade spirit pills a day. It would be better if I could refine more spiritual pills." It must be said that people are greedy. Li Zhirui's current cultivation speed is comparable to those double spiritual root cultivators with very high spiritual root purity, but he is still not satisfied. But even if the jade spirit pill is made by water method and has less poison, it does not mean that it has no poison. 3 jade spirit pills a day is the upper limit of cultivation and refining. The accumulated poison will be naturally discharged from the body, but if it exceeds this limit, the cultivator needs to find a way to actively discharge the poison. And this is a very troublesome thing. If you really want to do it, you need to consume a lot of time and energy, and it is not proportional to the gains. After Li Zhirui sighed, he stood up and went to the storehouse to hand in 500 Yuling pills and 300 Buling pills for this month. When passing by the small pond in the yard, he saw Daking sleeping soundly and couldn't help but sigh. After feeding Yuling pills for several months, it is impossible to say that Daking has not made any progress, but it is not to say how much progress has been made. The root cause is that in addition to the difficulty of spiritual beasts cultivation, there is also the reason that Daking is a turtle. The synonym of the turtle clan, in addition to long life, is slowness and laziness. Thanks to Menguo for the monthly ticket. Thanks to all friends for the recommendation tickets. Please invest. Chapter 19 Jealousy. You've come just in time. The family wants to see you. Li Zhirui saw Li Zhirui walk into the warehouse, and without saying a word, he grabbed him and walked to the main hall. Li Zhirui was dragged along the way with a confused look on his face, attracting many clan members to stop and watch, with different thoughts in their minds. Fortunately, the main hall was not far from the warehouse, and it only took a few minutes to get there. As soon as the two entered the door, they attracted everyone's attention. Li Zhirui glanced silently and found that all the senior members of the family had arrived, even Li Zhirui, who was in charge of the market, had returned. Such a solemn and formal scene made Li Zhirui more and more confused, and he couldn't figure out what they were going to do. "Zhirui, you tell me." After the two of them took their seats, Li Zhiqing, who was sitting at the head, spoke. Li Zhirui nodded and said, "Last month, The family's shop in the market sold a total of 1,500 jade spirit pails, more than 200 talismans, 18 magic tools and 2 sets of formations, with a total income of 5,649 spirit stones. After deducting various costs, the net income was 3,101 spirit stones. Wow! Although the people present were all family leaders and quite knowledgeable, they couldn't help but take a breath when they heard the number reported by Li Zhirui. The net income was 3,101 spirit stones. This is just 1 month's income. Even if it is because the jade spirit pail is very popular just after opening, it has such a high income. When the popularity drops, it may not be able to sell so much, but it is still a considerable income. You know, when the Li family was in Bailang County, the annual income was only 10,000 or 20,000 spirit stones, but now with a grocery store, it only takes 4 or 5 months to be comparable. In addition, the Li family still has a large amount of spiritual rice, 8 kinds of cultivated spiritual beasts, and some scattered spiritual objects that have not been sold. Just when everyone was shocked by this, Li Zhirui continued, in fact, these 1,500 yuling pills are far from meeting the market demand, because a few peddlers passed by not long ago and wanted to order 3,000 yuling pills. Hiss! The tribesmen who heard about this for the first time couldn't help but take a breath. Even if the price of yuling pills would be lower because those peddlers bought more, it was still a big business of 7,000 or 8,000 lingxi. No wonder Uncle Ren suddenly came to me a few days ago and asked me if I still had yuling pills. Li Zhirui suddenly realized. Because of Li Zhiruy's steady thinking, Li Zhirui didn't refine too many yuling pills last month. After completing the required number, he went to do other things. But suddenly one day, Li Zhirui found Li Zhirui and wanted to buy the extra yuling pills in his hands. Li Zhirui naturally wouldn't refuse, and sold the yuling pills in his hand to Li Zhirui. It was also from him that he learned that the sales of yuling pills met Li Zhiruy's requirements. This news made Li Zhirui very happy, because he could get the water alchemy recipe and related alchemy materials from the family. However, a few days later, Li Zhirui suddenly returned to the family and asked him if he had any jade spirit pails, but he returned disappointed. Li Zhirui guessed for a long time and couldn't guess the reason. Unexpectedly, it was because the store had a big business. As soon as Li Zhirui opened his mouth, he attracted everyone's attention. At the same time, many elders had hot eyes full of expectations. But they were destined to be disappointed. I can't refine so many jade spirit pails. Li Zhirui was willing to refine more spirit pails. After all, it would be good for him, but it would not hinder his practice. But this time it really didn't work. The number was too much. Li Zhirui would not compress his practice time for alchemy. This is 3,000 spirit pails. Even if Li Zhirui had 10 spirit pills out of the furnace, every time he refined the pill, he would need to refine 300 furnaces, and he would have to refine at least 10 furnaces of spirit pills every day. And this is still the best case. In fact, Li Zhirui could not achieve such a high success rate. Spirit stones are important, but cultivation is the foundation. Li Zhirui spoke up, and said seriously, you can't oppress or even exploit your clan members for the sake of profit. Once I know that this situation has occurred in the family, don't blame me for being ruthless. Finally, Li Zhirui released his own pressure, as a warning to everyone not to touch the bottom line. Li Zhilian's face did not change at all, because he knew that Li Zhirui would never agree to the short-sighted ideas of other senior executives, and there were other solutions to this kind of thing. Zhirui, you have been refining the jade spirit pill for several months. I think you have some experience in this aspect, right? Li Zhilian asked with a smile. Li Zhirui was stunned for a moment, and immediately reacted to what the elder meant. Various ideas emerged, and finally chose the decision that was most beneficial to him. I am willing to record my experience with a jade spirit pill and hand it over to the family, and I can teach the clan members to refine the jade spirit pill, but I can't guarantee that they can all learn it. Li Zhilian looked at Li Zhirui with a playful look on his face. From the previous contact, this kid would definitely not be the one who would suffer a loss, and there must be conditions. But Li Zhilian guessed wrong this time. He waited for a long time, but didn't hear Li Zhirui speak again. No more, Li Zhilian asked in surprise. Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhilian innocently, as if he didn't understand what he meant. Ahem, Li Zhilian cleared his throat awkwardly, but he always felt that something was wrong. How could Li Zhirui give away his experience in alchemy for nothing? Before, He had asked the family to let Li Zhirui spend more time on alchemy. Now this seriously damaged his interests, but he was so calm. Something must be wrong when things are abnormal. Li Zhilian pondered for a while, and then he understood why Li Zhirui was so generous. Showing favor. Li Zhirui was showing favor to those clansmen, so that those clansmen who were learning alchemy would remember his favor. At the same time, it was also to let the family leaders remember the sacrifices he made for the development of the family. In fact, in addition to these, there was another thing that Li Zhilian didn't expect. Li Zhirui wanted to take this opportunity to dispel the jealousy of the clansmen towards him. Although Li Zhirui stayed in the courtyard most of the time and didn't go out much, but every time he came out, Li Zhirui could feel the jealousy of the tribesmen under his compliments. As for why they were jealous, it was because the jade spirit pail was selling too well, so many tribesmen thought that Li Zhirui had made a lot of spiritual stones because of it, but they could only receive the family's meager monthly salary pitifully. Although they brought a lot of wealth to the family because of Li Zhirui, and the monthly salary also increased a little. But hatred of the rich and jealousy still ignited their hearts like a spark. But this is not a good phenomenon. Although Li Zhirui didn't think about getting along with the tribesmen, he didn't want to be isolated by the tribesmen. If Li Zhirui encounters any danger when forming a team to train outside in the future, maybe no tribesman will be willing to take the risk to save him. After Li Zhirui discovered this sign in the family, he was thinking about how to solve the matter, and now is a good opportunity. Seeking investment. Chapter 20 Teachings. Li Zhirui's calculations were so loud that some people thought of it, while others were just immersed in joy, thinking that Li Zhirui was a good child who valued the interests of the family. Li Shiking, who was sitting at the top, asked with a smile in his eyes, "Have you decided, if there was anyone among the dozen people present who saw through Li Zhirui's entire plan, it must be Li Shiking." However, Li Shiking was not dissatisfied with this, or felt that there was anything wrong with Li Zhirui's approach. Instead, he appreciated and valued Li Zhirui more and more. The Li family was previously under the rule of the Beastmaster sect. Although the development of the Li family was very slow due to the domineering and feudal nature of the Beastmaster sect, it also made the living environment around the Li family relatively peaceful and had no contact with the real world of cultivation. Therefore, the concepts of many family members have not changed, or their thinking is fixed. They are all stupid and have no scheming. But now it is different. The Li family moved away from Bailang County and came to this vast ocean, and the real and cruel world of cultivation is opening its doors to wait for the cultivators of the Li family. If it were like before, I don't know how many clansmen would fall into the calculations of others and become a pile of bones on the road of cultivation. Now Li Shiking found that Li Zhirui, who is the most respected clan member in the family and even the leader of the Li family in the future, was so smart, how could he not be satisfied? Yes, Li Zhirui knew that his little thoughts were seen through by Li Shiking, but he was not panicked at all, and said straightforwardly, "When the family selects the clan members to be trained, I will teach them." As for the experience of alchemy, Li Zhirui needed to sort it out, because since Li started learning alchemy, he has never forgotten to record his feelings and confusion. To this day, Li Zhirui has recorded 2 full jade slips, adding up to tens of thousands of words. "Since you are willing, then this matter is decided." Li Shiking waved his hand and said, "Everyone go and do your own things." After Li Zhirui left the main hall, he followed Li Shile to the warehouse and handed in the elixir that was to be delivered to the family this month. "You are not the kind of person who will suffer a loss. You didn't even raise any conditions in the main hall. What's your plan?" Li Shile and Li Zhirui have been in contact more and their relationship has become closer, so he teased Li Zhirui like this. Li Zhirui smiled and said, "Grandpa Li, what are you talking about? Can't I just want to repay the family for raising me all these years? I don't doubt your loyalty to the family, but you must have other calculations." Li Shile didn't believe Li Zhirui's nonsense. However, seeing that Li Zhirui was unwilling to say it, Li Shile didn't force it. Anyway, this kid has a sense of propriety, and with the second brother's intelligence, he can definitely see the kid's purpose. "Grandpa Li, I'm leaving first." Li Zhirui still had to hurry up to sort out his experience. If he didn't wait until the family had arranged the staff, he wouldn't have prepared his things, which would be so embarrassing. 3 days later, Li Zhirui waited for the 7 clan members arranged by the family. 2 of them were alchemists trained by the family before, and most of them were his elders. Only Li Zhilian was of the same generation as Li Zhirui, but she was also his sister. After Li Zhirui greeted everyone one by one, he took out the alchemy experience he had prepared and handed it to everyone, saying, "I don't know how to make an alchemy, but practice makes perfect. In this jade slip, I wrote down all the problems I encountered during my practice, and attached the solutions and the key points to pay attention to when making an alchemy, so I hope that all the elders can understand the contents of the jade slip thoroughly, and then we can practice again, which will also save some spiritual medicine for the family." What do you think? Well, Xiaoru is right. Alchemy should first understand the recipe thoroughly, only then can you master the method faster. Li Zhirui, the alchemist with the highest seniority and the only one, stood up to support Li Zhirui, which was also a support for him. Otherwise, as a junior, he would assign tasks to the elders right away. Even if it was well-intentioned, it would still make people feel uncomfortable. Li Zhirui bowed slightly to Li Zhirui to express his gratitude, and could not help but sigh in his heart that he was still too young. Although he was a little clever, he would inevitably make some mistakes. Gather in the alchemy room in 10 days, Li Zhirui took over the leadership. After arranging everyone, they dispersed. 10 days later, the 8 people gathered in the alchemy room. "Rui boy, I can already refine the jade spirit pill. You can watch the process of my alchemy first," Li Zhirui said. "I always feel that something is wrong." As an alchemist trained by the family, Li Zhirui's talent in alchemy is not worse than Li Zhirui, and he is more experienced. Although he has not yet reached the realm of one method to understand all methods, 10 days is enough for him to learn how to refine the jade spirit pill with water. At the same time, Li Zhirui stood up for Li Zhirui, so that he would not be inconvenient to teach everyone next. But now he, the elder with the highest seniority and the alchemy elder of the family, is willing to accept Li Zhirui's teachings. Can others refuse? "Grandpa Shai, please do it," Li Zhirui said respectfully. To be honest, Li Zhirui was not qualified to instruct Li Zhirui. Judging from his alchemy skills, he was much better than Li Zhirui. He used the formulas perfectly and steadily refined 7 jade spirit pills. The only shortcoming was that Li Zhirui was used to the fire refining method. When he first extracted the spiritual medicine, he used too much force, resulting in a little less spiritual medicine essence. I felt that something was wrong before, but I couldn't find the problem. It turned out to be here. Li Zhirui listened to Li Zhirui pointing out his problem and said with admiration, "You are worthy of being the unicorn of my Li family, Grandpa Shai. You are used to the fire refining method, so you didn't find it, but other places are very perfect. I can't reach your level." It's not that Li Zhirui was pretending to be modest, he was telling the truth. Li Zhirui waved his hand and said, "Come one by one. Let Rui see it." The other elders started to make pills one after another, and the results surprised Li Zhirui. He didn't expect that among the people present, in addition to the original 2 alchemists, one of the other 5 could also make the jade spirit pill. Although it was very reluctant, only 1 jade spirit pill was made. And the quality was not very good, but it was finally made. What Li Zhirui didn't know was that some of these people were apprentices in alchemy, and some had strong spiritual consciousness. In short, they all had a certain bonus to refining the jade spirit pill. The alchemy experience given by Li Zhirui was extremely comprehensive, which allowed this powerful clan member to learn to refine the jade spirit pill. With this example, Li Zhirui felt that among the remaining clansmen, there might be a few clansmen who could refine the jade spirit pill. But unfortunately, until the moon was in the middle of the sky, the other few people were unable to learn it. They always failed at a certain step. Li Zhirui sighed in his heart. According to the current situation, these people really have no talent in alchemy. If they insist on learning, they may have to consume a lot of spiritual medicine for them to learn. "Let's stop here today," Li Zhirui said. He was not disappointed with the result. Because the Li family has done this before, but it didn't work either. In fact, Li Zhirui was very satisfied that a member of the family learned to refine the jade spirit pill. "Remember to come to the alchemy room at noon tomorrow." After saying that, he signaled Li Zhirui to follow him and leave. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 21 Acquisition. As soon as they walked away, Li Zhirui thanked him. "Thank you, Grandpa Shai, for helping me out." "What's there to thank me for?" Li Zhirui shook his head, then looked at Li Zhirui with a serious face, and said, "Alchemy is a profound art, but cultivation is the foundation. Don't be too obsessed with it. I know. It's good to know. It's good to know." Li Zhirui showed a bitterness at the corner of his mouth and said, "Go back." After that, Li Zhirui turned and left. Li Zhirui looked at his much older figure, feeling a lot of emotion in his heart. Although he didn't know the specific reason, it was not difficult to guess what was going on. It took a few days for Li Zhirui and Li Shai to teach another tribe member, and there was a trend of success, but Li Zhirui didn't go to the alchemy room again because he was no longer needed. Li Zhirui's generous behavior made his situation on the island much better. At least he didn't see jealousy in the eyes of his tribe members. One day, Li Zhirui applied to go out again. The purpose of his going to the market this time was to find a way to sell the thousands of kilograms of spiritual rice in his hands. Li Zhirui had already found the buyers, the group of vagrants mentioned by Li Shiren before. The reason why he chose them was that they offered the highest price. Li Zhirui still learned about this from Li Shai accidentally. He said that the vagrants were going to sell the spiritual rice to the distant northern border. Because it was cold all year round, the cost of growing spiritual rice was too high, so they usually bought it from the south. The price of spiritual rice in the northern border was twice as expensive as that in Yunqing market, so the price they offered was also higher than that of some shops. Of course, it was only 1 and 5 spiritual stones per kilogram, and it would not be doubled. However, these vagrants going to the north would only pass through Yunqing market once every few years, and the time was uncertain. Like this year, they came a little late, and the spiritual rice planted by most forces had already been sold. Except for the Li family. The reason is very simple. The Li family relocated, which caused the spiritual rice to grow poorly. Later, the family thought of many ways to keep the spiritual rice, but the output was reduced a lot. Originally, the family thought that the spiritual rice would be harvested late this year and could not be sold at a high price, so they put it in the grocery store and sold it slowly, but they did not expect to encounter such a good thing. They immediately sold most of the spiritual rice that the family had collected and earned several thousand spiritual stones. After Li Zhirui knew the news, he naturally did not want to miss it, otherwise, wouldn't so much spiritual rice be sold cheaply. After landing, Li Zhirui covered his appearance, walked into the market in a black dress, and went straight to the inn where the merchants rested. He used a few spiritual stones to learn from the waiter about the merchant's room. Li Zhirui strode to the door and knocked on their door gently. "I heard that you are buying spiritual rice at a high price," Li Zhirui said in a rough voice. "Yes," the wealthy businessman said with a smile. "Dao, please come in and discuss in detail." Li Zhirui shook his head and refused. Although the market was safe, who knew if they would see that he was alone and do something to him? "May I ask how much spiritual rice do you have? What grade is it?" The businessman did not mind, and stood at the door to talk about business with Li Zhirui. "A total of 5,800 kilograms of spiritual rice, all of which are first grade top grade, spiritual rice of the water and wood elements." Li Zhirui said this through voice transmission, and at the same time took out a storage bag, held it in his hand, and asked him to use his spiritual sense to explore it. A storage bag could not hold so many kilograms of spiritual rice, and Li Zhirui took it out just to let the other party see the grade of the spiritual rice. "Well, the first grade Yanshu spiritual rice is of good quality." The merchant nodded with satisfaction and said, "The purchase price is 1.5 spiritual stones per pound. If the weight is correct, it will be 8,700 spiritual stones. If the 3 storage bags are included, dozens of spiritual stones will be added. After all, it is impossible to trade the spiritual rice back and forth, right? That would be too troublesome." The other party said that he was willing to give Li Zhirui 3 empty storage bags, but he was worried that they would do something with the storage bags, so he refused and chose to sell the storage bags to them at a low price, including the dirty storage bag. However, Li Zhirui did not trust the other party, so how could they trust Li Zhirui? I am afraid that once Li Zhirui left, they would resell the storage bags. Moreover, the two traded the spiritual rice in these 3 storage bags 3 times, which was very troublesome, but both parties were very satisfied with the results. "If you still have spiritual rice, come find us." After the transaction was completed, the merchant did not forget to say, "We will leave in 7 days." "Okay," Li Zhirui readily agreed, but in fact he could not get so much spiritual rice. All the spiritual rice in the space was ripe. He only had a few hundred kilograms of spiritual rice left for himself and docking. After leaving the inn, Li Zhirui immediately found a secluded place with no one around, changed his clothes, and put on a pure white mask to cover his facial features. At the same time, he performed the cicada breathing technique to restrain his own breath, then blended into the crowd and walked around aimlessly in the market to avoid possible tracking. After confirming that no one was following him, Li Zhirui walked into a shop selling spiritual medicines and spiritual seeds. He planned to make up as many first-level spiritual medicines as possible that he did not have, and buy second-level spiritual seeds. Although Li Zhirui is still at the 7th level of key training, the growth time of second-level spiritual medicines is also very long. Since he was not going to plant too much spiritual rice, there were dozens of acres of spiritual fields in the space, which were just right for planting second-level spiritual medicines. Maybe when he broke through the foundation building stage, a batch of second-level spiritual medicines would be ripe. At worst, he could use spiritual stones to stimulate the birth of them, which would also save him some spiritual stones. When the clerk heard that Li Zhirui wanted to buy second-level spiritual seeds, he looked at him strangely, but since he was a guest, he would not turn away the business that was delivered to his door. When Li Zhirui heard the clerk talk about the price of second-level spiritual seeds, he understood what the other party meant by that look before. Most first-level spiritual seeds are very cheap, and you can buy a large bag with 10 spiritual stones. But second-level spiritual seeds are sold by the grain, and each grain costs dozens or even hundreds of spiritual stones. Is it so expensive? Li Zhirui couldn't help but smack his lips. No wonder the family attaches so much importance to second-level spiritual seeds, and he is not allowed to get close. Dao, once the second-level spiritual medicine matures, the lowest price is 3 digits. The spiritual seeds we sell are already very cheap, the guy said. Dao can buy one of each and cultivate it yourself, so it's cheaper. Moreover, spiritual seeds are not consumables. When they're mature, they will breed spiritual seeds. In other words, as long as the spiritual seeds do not wither halfway, no one will come to buy them a second time. The store will naturally set the price higher. Haha, Li Zhirui laughed dryly. Although he now has nearly 9,000 spiritual stones in his hand, if he really buys one of each as he said, he will go bankrupt immediately. But he still has to buy. After some careful consideration, Li Zhirui said, "Golden edge flower, youngling fruit. Give me one of each." More than a dozen common second-level spiritual medicines that are often used in alchemy were spit out from Li Zhirui's mouth, one by one. One is enough. Li Zhirui decided to use spiritual stones to promote the birth of second-level spiritual medicines after returning, so that they can mature quickly. At that time, he can harvest a large number of spiritual seeds and expand the scale of second-level spiritual medicines. However, when paying the bill with spirit stones, Li Zhirui couldn't help but feel the pain. Just a few dozen spirit seeds cost him more than 1,000 spirit stones. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Success. After buying the spiritual seeds, Li Zhirui walked towards the family shop. He looked outside and found that the business was quite good. There were cultivators in the shop almost every moment. Seeing that the two elders were busy greeting customers, Li Zhirui did not go in to disturb them, but turned around and left silently. What Li Zhirui did not expect was that he would be surprised as soon as he returned to the Banyan Island. He had sent someone to the market to buy the water method pill recipe that Li Shiking promised Li Zhirui before, and bought 5 pill recipes and the corresponding 50 spiritual medicines at one time. "Thank you, Grandpa," the clan leader, Li Zhirui said happily. Li Shiking shook his head and said, "This is what you deserve. I hope that after you learn it, you can write down your experience and put it in the Sutra Pavilion." Li Shiking saw that Li Zhirui's expression did not change, and then he continued, "From now on, every time the clan members borrow it, half of the contribution value they pay will be allocated to you." "Okay, when I learn it, I will send my experience to the Sutra Pavilion," Li Zhirui agreed readily. Although he paid, he also gained something. Moreover, the family became rich and powerful. As a member of the family, Li Zhirui could also get more benefits. Besides, the water refining method was not easy to learn. "Well, then you go back," Li Zhirui bowed and turned to leave. Back in the courtyard, Li Zhirui did not rush to look through the recipe, but entered the space, ready to plant the spiritual seeds in his hand, and at the same time use the spiritual stones to promote the birth of the dozen or so second-level spiritual medicines. Li Zhirui chose the golden-edged flower with the shortest maturity time. As the spiritual stones were buried in the soil, The golden-edged flower quickly sprouted from the spiritual seeds, grew up, produced flower buds, and finally bloomed completely. It only took a quarter of an hour for a second-level spiritual medicine to grow from spiritual seeds to maturity, but it was exchanged for more than 150 spiritual stones. A golden-edged flower costs 140 spiritual stones on the market. If you force it to grow, you have to pay more than 10 spiritual stones, Li Zhirui murmured. He had previously promoted the production of first-order spiritual medicines, and knew that promoting the production of second-order spiritual medicines would definitely cost him some spiritual stones, but he did not expect that there would be more than a dozen spiritual stones. Well, plant them slowly. Anyway, he was not in a hurry now, and he did not need second-order spiritual medicines, so he could promote the production of one plant of each spiritual medicine and expand the scale. Li Zhirui carefully took out a dozen spiritual seeds from the heart of the golden-edged flower, sealed the golden-edged flower in a jade box, and then planted the spiritual seeds in the nearby area. Then, Li Zhirui did the same with other second-order spiritual seeds, but it only cost 2 or 3,000 spiritual stones in half a day. Li Zhirui felt very painful, but for the sake of future alchemy, he could only comfort himself that his current efforts were for a better future. After Li Zhirui promoted the production of second-order spiritual seeds, he planted the first-order spiritual seeds that he had not had before, and then walked to the spiritual field beside the spiritual lake. Li Zhirui had good eyesight. He saw at first glance that there was a small sprout just emerging from the ridge of the field, opposite the spirit lake. Is it the spiritual seed that I accidentally dropped here? Because Daking often played and rested by the spirit lake, Li Zhirui did not plant any spiritual objects within 10 feet of the spirit lake. So this lonely spiritual medicine could only be due to this reason. Li Zhirui originally wanted to pull it out. Anyway, it was just a first-level spiritual medicine, but he finally gave up. After all, it had grown out and was close to the spiritual field, so it would not hinder Daking. It took several hours to deal with the trivial matters in the space. At this time, Li Zhirui took out the 5 pill recipes and prepared to carefully choose which one he would learn next. King Pill. After taking it, you can calm your mind and gather ki. The spiritual medicines required: Kinglu fruit, misty leaf. This is a spiritual pill that assists in cultivation and can speed up the absorption of spiritual energy. But the reason why King Pill is sought after by cultivators is not to assist in cultivation, but to calm the mind. Blood-generating pill, spirit-nourishing pill. The other 4 kinds of elixirs also have their own characteristics. It can be seen that the family also spent a lot of thought when selecting them, otherwise it would not be so comprehensive. If the 2 kinds of pill recipes purchased by Li Zhirui are counted, then the Li family has dabbled in various aspects such as increasing mana, assisting cultivation, healing, and replenishing mana. In addition to an extremely special pill, the barrier-breaking pill. The barrier-breaking pill does not refer to a certain kind of elixir, but a category of elixir. For example, the well-known foundation-building pill is a kind of barrier-breaking pill. There are more advanced ones such as the golden pill and the infant-forming pill. It can also be seen from here that the barrier-breaking pill is an extremely precious elixir. Its recipe is not seen in the outside world at all. It is normal that the Li family cannot get it. Li Zhirui took out the king pill from the 5 pill recipes and decided to learn this method first, and then consider the remaining recipes after practicing it. But when looking at the pill recipe, Li Zhirui encountered a problem. Refining the king pill requires one more method than the Yulang pill and the Bulang pill. The secret of nurturing pills. Li Zhirui frowned. He had never heard of this secret. The literal meaning was easy to understand, but he had no idea how to do it. Li Zhirui put away the recipe, stood up and walked towards the alchemy room. He wanted to ask Li Zhirui if he knew this method. I have heard of this method. It is said that the efficacy of the elixir that has been used with this method will be 1 or 2 points higher than that of ordinary elixir. But you know the past situation of the family. It is impossible to collect such a precious method. At the end, Li Zhirui's face was full of helplessness and regret. After getting the answer from Li Zhirui, Li Zhirui frowned. He didn't expect that the secret of nurturing pills would have such benefits, but at the same time, Li Zhirui also knew that this method was precious. Not to mention how much it cost, it was also a question whether it was sold on the market. You want to refine king pill, right? As the alchemy elder of the family, Li Zhirui knew what Li Zhirui was thinking, but he could only persuade him, you should refine other kinds of elixirs first. Well, I know. What else could Li Zhirui do except agree? He didn't have the ability to figure out a pill formula by himself. This matter couldn't be blamed on the clansmen who bought the pill formula. After all, when buying, you couldn't see the full content of the pill formula. If they made a little move and hide the matter, how could you know? After returning to the courtyard, Li Zhirui carefully read the other 4 pill formulas. Fortunately, there was no similar situation. Let's refine Shangsu pill first. This pill, like Bailang pill, is a very popular elixir and there is no worry about not being able to sell it. Perhaps because of the experience of refining Yulin pill and Bailang pill, this time Li Zhirui only took a few days to thoroughly understand the Shangsu pill formula and understood all the processes. On the morning of the 5th day, Li Zhirui got up early, put aside many distracting thoughts in his mind, cleaned the alchemy furnace, and then poured spiritual water into it. Blood deer antler, white ginseng, the 5 kinds of spiritual medicines for refining the blood-growing pill were taken out one by one. Li Zhirui extracted the essence from them and then put them into the spiritual water. As his 10 fingers flew, he cast the alchemy formula one by one, and the essences that were originally distinct began to merge with each other. Li Zhirui was calm and had a good grasp of the timing. Every step was completed properly. Half an hour later, a wisp of pill fragrance wafted out of the alchemy furnace. Li Zhirui's expression did not change. He slowly put away the formula, and then took out the spiritual pill. 5 pills. Li Zhirui showed a bright smile on his face. Not only did he succeed in refining the blood-growing pill for the first time, but the number of pills was not small. However, Li Zhirui also knew that he could achieve this result. In addition to refining hundreds of pills in the past few months, it was also related to the low difficulty of the blood-growing pill. Thank you for your support. Asking for investment, asking for votes, asking for collections, always asking for anything. Chapter 23 Restaurant. Dong, dong, dong. On this day, the bronze bell of the family, which had not been rung for a long time, made a series of dull sounds. The sound was not loud, but it reached the ears of every member of the family on the island. What happened? Ringing the bronze bell to summon all the members of the family, Li Zhirui stopped playing with decking and looked at the main hall with a puzzled look. You stay at home and I'll be back soon. After that, Li Zhirui got up and left. Because of the distance, when Li Zhirui came to the square in front of the main hall, most of the members of the family had already arrived. Brother How, do you know why the family wants to summon us? Li Zhirui asked curiously. You kid stays in the room all day, and you don't even know that the family is going to open a restaurant in the market. Li Zhirui looked at Li Zhirui with a strange look on his face. Li Zhirui laughed awkwardly twice. He really didn't like to go out, because he didn't know how to deal with strange members of the family. In theory, everyone is from the same family, and they are relatives in terms of blood, but in fact, they have not met each other many times and are not familiar with each other at all. Especially after Li Zhirui learned how to make alchemy with water and taught it to several clansmen, those clansmen who had almost no impression of him would rush to him like hungry wolves seeing fresh meat every time they saw him. Then, they praised Li Zhirui, saying that he was a proud child of heaven and a genius rarely seen in 100 years. In short, they exaggerated as much as they could, which made Li Zhirui's skin crawl. So Li Zhirui, who didn't like to go out, was even more reluctant to go out. Now, except for handing in the elixir, he hardly stepped out of the door. Originally, he thought that teaching the clansmen to make alchemy would make his situation in the clan better, but in fact, there was no difference. Now, when he heard Li Zhirui say that the family was going to open a restaurant, Li Zhirui calculated in his mind and found that they had been away from Bailang County for almost a year. In this year, the Li family developed very well and could earn a lot of spiritual stones every month. If it was in the oppressive and feudal place of the beast-taming sect, what the Li family was doing now would either be forcibly taken away by the beast-taming sect or work for the beast-taming sect and be exploited by them in another way. Thinking of this, Li Zhirui couldn't help but feel lucky that the Baiyu sect had a Yuanying cultivator who destroyed the Yeshao sect. Otherwise, the Li family would have to be lucky to maintain its original state, not to mention growing stronger. After all the clansmen on the island arrived, Li Shiking and several elders also walked out of the main hall. I think everyone already knows the reason for summoning you this time, Li Shiking said with a smile. After a year of hard practice, the family has successfully trained 2 first-level spiritual chefs. In fact, as early as half a year ago, the 2 clansmen trained by the family could already mix spiritual food, but at that time they only knew a simple spiritual food, and it was impossible to open a restaurant, so they didn't publicize it. It wasn't until half a month ago that the two of them mastered all the spiritual recipes that the family had purchased before, and then Li Zhirui rented a restaurant in the market, and then made it public. Although many clansmen already knew about it. The restaurant will open tomorrow. Clan members who want to go to the market should come here before the morning of the 10th hour tomorrow. Elder Li Zhirui will lead you to the market. Everyone cheered. After all, the family rules were there. Many clan members who did not meet the conditions could not leave the daring island. This time, all clan members could go, so everyone was naturally happy. The next morning, except for the clan members of the Shi generation, the rest of the clan members were all present, especially those who were younger than Li Zhirui. They were all very excited. Because they were not yet 18 years old, and their cultivation had not reached the late stage of key training, they could not apply to go out. Today, they could leave the daring island where they were tired of staying, so how could they not be happy? When everyone arrived at the market, Li Zhirui led everyone to the restaurant. Seeing that there were already a few guests inside, he did not take everyone in and said, "You can go and have fun on your own, but you must return here before the evening hour, otherwise you will be punished according to the family rules," Li Zhirui said with a gloomy face, fearing that everyone would have too much fun and forget the time. Everyone responded loudly and then dispersed quickly. Li Zhirui did not leave with the others. After all, he had been to Fangxi several times, so he naturally did not find it new. So he stayed and wanted to see how the restaurant was doing. After all, this was his idea. Yunchanglao was the name of Li's restaurant. It was located on the branch road of Fangxi. There were quite a lot of monks coming and going. The location was not the best, but it was not bad. It was a 2-story wooden building. There was a small courtyard behind the kitchen, where spirit beasts could be placed, food could be prepared, and people could rest. It was said that there was a restaurant here before, but the spirit chef's skills were not good, and he could not retain monks. The business was bleak and eventually closed down. This was convenient for the Li family. There was no need to renovate. As long as they cleaned it up and bought some tables, chairs, bowls and chopsticks, they could open the restaurant for business. After all, one more day of delay would waste one day's rent. But no one knew what was going on. The monks who came and went did not even notice that the restaurant had changed its owner, so the lobby was empty and there were few customers. Grandpa Zhilian, this won't work. No one comes at all. Li Zhirui approached Li Zhilian and said. Li Zhilian also saw this situation and was anxious, but he didn't know how to solve it. He immediately asked, "Have you thought of any solution? Advertise it widely and offer opening discounts." Li Zhirui said the two most common ways to attract customers to new stores in his previous life. Li Zhilian seemed to understand it, but he was too lazy to listen to Li Zhirui's explanation. He waved his hand and said, "Since you have an idea, go ahead and do it. I need a sound amplification stone." Li Zhirui couldn't refuse, and he had to do it himself. "What do you want this little thing for?" Although he said so, Li Zhilian still flipped through the storage bag and took out a stone half the size of a palm. Li Zhirui didn't explain, but recorded a message in front of Li Zhilian. The new store of Yunchanglao has opened. Today, there is a discount for all customers. 2 spiritual stones will be deducted for every 30 spiritual stones spent. In addition, a bowl of spiritual rice will be given for every spiritual food purchased. The voice was amplified by the sound amplification stone, and it immediately attracted many cultivators. A casual cultivator asked, "Are you telling the truth? Are you kidding us? Do I know Li's grocery store? This is the restaurant opened by my Li family." "Naturally, I won't kid you," Li Zhirui patted his chest and assured. "How can you prove that this is the Li family's restaurant?" Fortunately, someone knew the shopkeeper Li Zhirui, and immediately revealed his identity. Li Zhirui brought up the name of the Li family as a guarantee, and the man reluctantly believed it and walked into Yunchanglao. Seeing that many cultivators were still hesitating, he added, "The new store has opened, and the number of spiritual food is limited. If it is sold out, there will be no such discount." After hearing this, the cultivators who were still hesitant entered Yunchanglao. The area of the first floor is not large. In order to ensure that it is not too crowded, only 12 square tables were placed. With Li Zhirui's promotion and sales, the first floor was soon filled with cultivators. As for the second floor, there were 8 private rooms separated. Because of the soundproofing array and exquisite decorations, a certain fee was charged, and ordinary cultivators were reluctant to spend this amount of spiritual stones. Thank you for your support. Follow-up reading is related to the recommendation of the new book period, which is very important. Please help. Chapter 24, Jealousy. The guests have all come, but whether they can be retained depends on the skills of the two spiritual chefs. And this is where Li Zhirui can't help. You are still smart, you actually came up with this idea. Li Zhirui's face was full of joy, and his eyes were full of admiration for Li Zhirui. After a few humble words, Li Zhirui expressed his worries. Most of today's guests come for the discount. If you want to retain them, you have to look at the quality of the spiritual food. Are you confident about this? Of course, Li Zhirui said affirmatively. Under the family's unremitting efforts to cultivate, the level of these two spiritual chefs is much better than that of ordinary spiritual chefs. Hearing this, Li Zhirui also breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the quality is not a problem, then Yunshanglao will be stable, at least it will not be as embarrassing as the previous restaurant. Not long after, spiritual food was served on the table, and the small store was suddenly shrouded in various aromas, and was brought out by the breeze. This smells so good, the monk passing by couldn't help but say. When I passed by just now, I heard that this restaurant has changed its owner. Sure enough, how dare you take over without some skills? Didn't you say that the new store is opening, and there are any discounts? I'll go in and taste it. Many monks were standing outside the door and discussing, and some wanted to come in and taste the fragrant spiritual food. As soon as a few people walked up the steps, they saw that the restaurant was full and asked, "Are there no empty tables in the store?" There are also private rooms on the second floor. But private rooms? Li Zhirui paused, and suddenly changed the subject, saying, "The new store is opening today, and private rooms are free." Really? After getting Li Zhirui's affirmative reply, the monk said excitedly, "Then let's go to the private rooms." After a while, all 8 private rooms were filled with monks. While Li Zhirui was soliciting customers, the monks who had been impatient for a long time began to taste the spiritual food they ordered. This 5-treasure soup is so delicious. It melts in your mouth, and the taste is mellow and endless aftertaste. Moreover, the mana after refining is also extremely pure and heavy. That's right. Although the price of the wine shrimp I ordered is a bit expensive, the mana gained after refining is more than what I can get from 3 days of cultivation. The spiritual chefs in Yunshanglao are really amazing. The most common ginseng stewed chicken is better than other restaurants. In addition to satisfying the appetite, spiritual food is more important to increase one's own mana while enjoying it, and this is the foundation of spiritual food. Obviously, in this regard, the 2 spiritual chefs of the Li family did a very good job, which made all the cultivators very satisfied. In fact, in addition to the ability of the 2 spiritual chefs, there is also the reason that the spiritual beasts cultivated by the Li family are of higher quality. You know, of the 9 kinds of spiritual beasts cultivated by the Li family, except for cloudfish, whitewater shrimp and flower scale fish, the other 6 have been cultivated for hundreds of years. Whether it is meat quality or spiritual energy, they have reached a very high level, which is simply not comparable to the spiritual beasts purchased by other restaurants. Most of the cultivators who entered Yunshanglao were casual cultivators. Each person only ordered 1 or 2 spiritual food dishes, plus a bowl of spiritual rice for free, and they could finish the food in no time. As soon as they left, cultivators soon came in. After all, Li Zhirui's loudspeaker stone had never stopped promoting, and when he saw an empty table, he would add a sentence to ensure that the table would not be empty for too long. Time passed by bit, and at noon, a tribe member who was busy in the kitchen ran out in a hurry and said, "Zhirui, there are not many materials in the store." Uncle Shilian went to get the materials. "You should control the number of people a little." I know, Li Zhirui did not expect that there would be a shortage of materials, but this was a good thing, which meant that the business of Yunshanglao exceeded everyone's expectations. On the first day of opening, Yunshanglao business was very hot, and guests came in an endless stream, so that when it closed, everyone, including Li Zhirui who helped, was exhausted. Zhirui is really smart and came up with such a good idea. Li Zhirui, the shopkeeper of Yunshanglao, had a big round face full of smiles. Because Yunshanglao was busy with business, Li Zhirui did not go back with Li Shilian and others. Now it was late, and Li Zhirui was too tired to move, so he planned to rest in the market for one night and go back tomorrow. Uncle Zhirui, many cultivators came here for discounts today. Tomorrow's business may not be so good, so when you prepare materials, don't handle them according to today's scale. Li Zhirui was a little worried that everyone was overwhelmed by today's enthusiasm, so he quickly reminded them. Well, I know, Li Zhirui was chosen to be the shopkeeper of Yancheng Lao, so he must have some skills. He also comforted the spirit chefs and kitchen helpers, and said, everyone has worked hard today. Rest early, and you have to get up early tomorrow. There was no conversation all night. The next day, when it was slightly bright, several kitchen helpers got up to deal with spirit beasts and various materials. Because they didn't know how the business would be today, under Li Zhirui's order, they didn't prepare too many materials. But what everyone didn't expect was that today's business was not much worse than yesterday's. Li Zhirui asked a guest with some curiosity, and found out that it was because after yesterday's guests left, many people recommended the spiritual food of Yancheng Lao to their relatives and friends. Because they said the spiritual food was particularly delicious, especially the spiritual energy contained in the spiritual food, which was more than the spiritual food of other restaurants, which made the business of Yancheng Lao still hot. Of course, it won't take long for the business to return to normal. After all, although the spiritual food is good, the price is not cheap. Not to mention casual cultivators, even Li Zhirui can't eat it every day. However, the reputation of Yancheng Lao has been publicized. As long as there are cultivators who want to taste spiritual food, Yancheng Lao is their first choice. In just 1 month, Yancheng Lao became the best restaurant in Yongfang City. As the business of Yancheng Lao is getting better and better, the business of other restaurants in the market will inevitably get worse. Especially before Yancheng Lao appeared, the first restaurant in the market welcomed immortal guests. The restaurant that used to be full of guests can now set up a bird outside the door. Brother Liu, why do you still come to Yingxiang? The spiritual food in this place not only tastes bad, but also lacks spiritual energy, and more importantly, it is expensive. One day, Yingxiang walked into 8 monks. Before the shopkeeper could smile, he heard such a sentence and his face suddenly sank. Oh, another person said, Brother Liu just came out of retreat, how could he know Yancheng Lao? That's right, the other people echoed one after another, and actually praised Yancheng Lao in front of the shopkeeper. Although they did not belittle Yingxiang again, it was not difficult to see that they all wanted to go to Yancheng Lao. Brother Liu, who was treating the guests, asked in confusion, the Yancheng Lao you are talking about is also a restaurant, right? Is it really as good as you say? Of course. If you ask any monk, he will know Yancheng Lao. Hearing this, Brother Liu also became interested in Yancheng Lao and said, in that case, let's go to Yancheng Lao today. After that, regardless of the shopkeeper's gloomy face, he turned around and left with everyone. Seeking support. Chapter 25 Ambush. The shopkeeper, who was originally dissatisfied because of the booming business of Yancheng Lao, which led to the bleak business of his own restaurant, was now ridiculed by the group of cultivators and relegated Yingxiang to the mud. He was furious and wanted to smash the store of Yancheng Lao immediately. Fortunately, the shopkeeper still had some rationality in his heart and did not act impulsively, but he had buried the idea of attacking Yancheng Lao. After Yingxiang closed the door, the shopkeeper hurriedly left the market and flew towards his family's ancestral land. The shopkeeper's surname was Qin. His family was a vassal foundation-building family of Yuan Mingzong, and its family land was 300 miles outside the market. After a while, shopkeeper Qin returned to the family and knocked on the door of the clan leader. Why did you come back in a hurry tonight? The head of the Qin family frowned, his eyebrows were full of irritability. After all, no one would be in a good mood if they were disturbed during cultivation. Shopkeeper Qin hurriedly told the story of how his restaurant's business was taken away by Yancheng Lao, which led to the bleak business, and cried, Patriarch, if this continues, Yingxiang will have to close. Bang! Patriarch Qin slammed the table and shouted angrily, Yingxiang's business was very good in previous years. How come it has become like this in your hands? You are still making excuses for yourself now, Patriarch. Shopkeeper Qin trembled all over and almost knelt down directly. He cried and said, I didn't lie to you. Yancheng Lao really took away a lot of customers from Yingxiang. There were no other restaurants in the market, but the business of these restaurants did not change much because of Yancheng Lao. Because most of these restaurants are inns, mainly for the monks to rest, and spiritual food is just a bonus, unlike Yingxiang and Yancheng Lao, which are only places for eating. What is the origin of Yancheng Lao? Seeing that he didn't seem to be pretending, Patriarch Qin suppressed his anger and asked solemnly. Yingxiang is the main source of income for the Qin family. If the business gets worse, it will affect the development of the entire family. I heard that it is a restaurant opened by the Li family of the Banyan Island overseas. Li family, the Qin clan leader immediately reacted and said, is it the Li family that sells water to refine elixirs? Seeing that the shopkeeper Qin nodded, the clan leader's face suddenly became much more serious. The Li family has been in this area for a year. Even if there is no publicity, many people know that the Li family has 4 foundation building cultivators. In addition to Li Zhirui and Li Zhilian who often travel outside, outsiders do not know the realm of the remaining 2 foundation building cultivators. But even so, under the rule of Yuan Mingzong, among the 9 vassal forces, the strength of the Li family is also among the best, and it is not something that the Qin family can offend. Although the Qin family has a backer, the friendship between the 2 sides has decreased a lot over the years. If he is troubled again, I am afraid that his friendship with the Qin family will be exhausted. When shopkeeper Qin saw that his patriarch had fallen silent, he was anxious for a moment, worried that he would not dare to take action because of fear of the Li family's strength, so he immediately said, the 3 major families near the Li family also have the idea of taking action. Are you talking about the Zhang, Zhang, and He families? A gleam of light flashed in the eyes of the patriarch Qin, and he said, have these 3 families sent people to contact you? These 3 major families are located to the east of the Li family, which is the closest place to the open sea in Yuan Mingzong. Because of the beast tide that erupts every 10 years, the strength of the 3 families' cultivators is strong, but the clan members are scarce. Now that the Li family has exposed such a strong strength, how can they rest assured? Shopkeeper Qin was shocked. He didn't expect the patriarch to guess this, but he didn't think about it. As the head of a family, if he didn't have a brain, how could he sit firmly in this position? Humph, the patriarch Qin snorted disdainfully and said, stupid. You don't even know that you are being used as a gun. However, having said that, it doesn't mean that he doesn't want to take action against the Li family. After all, Yixiang is too important to the Qin family. Go and tell the 3 monks that we will not get involved in this matter. They can do whatever they want. We and the Li family are just competing in business. There is no need to make a deadly feud, but the spiritual food of Yuncheng Lao is indeed outstanding. We are not as good as them. The face of the Qin clan leader sank, and he said, I will find a way to solve this matter. You just need to tell the 3 monks what I said. Upon hearing this, shopkeeper Qin stammered, but he was overjoyed in his heart. As long as Yixiang's business recovered, he could continue to collect spiritual stones from it. When he returned to the market at dawn, shopkeeper Qin immediately contacted the 3 monks and told them what his clan leader said. Humph, the Zhang family monk sneered, I didn't expect the Qin family to be a bunch of losers. Shopkeeper Qin remained silent, got up and left on his own. What if he was ridiculed a few times? It wouldn't lose a spiritual stone. What should we do now? Asked the He family cultivator. The Qin family is unwilling to intervene, so should the 3 of us take action? Of course we have to, said the Zhang family cultivator sinisterly, and we have to push the matter on to the Qin family. After nightfall, the bustling streets during the day slowly fell into silence, but a shop located in a hidden corner of the market quietly opened its doors at this time. Not long after, shopkeeper Qin, who was wearing a black suit to conceal his true identity, flashed into the shop. Shopkeeper Qin walked straight to the side covered with jade tablets, engraved what he was going to do with his spiritual sense, and then walked to the old man behind the counter with a jade slip and asked, I want to issue this task, 1,000 spirit stones. The old man glanced at it casually and quoted a price. Shopkeeper Qin knew the rules here, so he honestly took out the spirit stones and turned to leave. That day, Li Zhirui got up early, cast a cleaning spell, and hurriedly flew westward. Today, he will go to the market with Li Zhilian, who is delivering materials and collecting debts, and Li Zhiding, who is replacing Li Zhirui. Li Zhirui's purpose of going to the market is to sell a large number of elixirs in his hands. Since he taught his clansmen to refine the jade spirit pill, he has not refined this pill in large quantities, but started to refine other elixirs. Although these elixirs are also purchased by the family, they are not as open to all as the jade spirit pill, so Li Zhirui can only go to the market to find buyers. However, this kind of thing is too dangerous, and Li Zhirui dare not act alone, so when he knew that Li Zhilian and Li Zhiding were going to the market today, he made up his mind to pull their banner to protect himself. Li Zhilian and Li Zhiding had no objection to this, and Li Zhilian even wanted to accompany Li Zhirui. However, Li Zhirui had a secret, so he naturally would not agree, and could only evade the matter. Let's go. After the 3 of them arrived, They directly activated the spirit ship and flew towards the market. As soon as Li Zhirui got on the ship, she said something to the two and entered the cabin. Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui both knew that she had a cold temperament and resisted contact with people, so they didn't care. They set off. There's only one foundation building cultivator. The moment the spirit ship flew out of the Banyan Island, a communication talisman flew out quickly, and several cultivators who were ambushing on the way soon got the news. As for Li Zhirui, who was standing next to Li Zhirui, he was not qualified to be included because of his cultivation. It's a pity that they didn't know that Li Zhirui was not the only foundation-building cultivator who came out this time. Bang! When the spirit ship flew halfway, a column of water suddenly rushed up from the bottom of the sea. The huge impact force almost overturned the spirit ship. Before Li Zhirui and Li Zhirui could stand still, 3 masked black-clothed cultivators appeared outside. Thank you all for your support. Please recommend and read more. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.